Oh, now it says it's recording.
Yeah, boom. If the video gets glitchy, we'll have to try something else. But so far it looks good.
All right. So we'll
What's up, Matt?
we'll start with the beginning. So welcome to Carson, who knows Jack and wants the rest of us to learn all about Jack, so that we will no longer you don't know Jack.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I'm
Maybe.
worried about, is that if we say too much, people will learn about Jack and then they won't buy the book.
Oh yeah. Well, we won't give away too much.
So your Kickstarter successfully funded. Is that because you guys just set it really, really, really low, or because you're popular?
I mean, it could be because we set it really low, but I hope it's because people are interested in the product. We did set it at like, okay, we're gonna make $100 off of this. You know, we set it at like, how do we get the book out there rather than how do we make money off of it. But now it looks like we're making money too, which is awesome, and hopefully we can, if we can break 200 books printed, which we're getting close to, because we're, last I looked at it, like 130 something backers, and a couple of them are retailers who are buying 20 books a piece, and some people are buying 5 books a piece, right? So we're getting close to 200 books. If we break 200 books, then the next tier of printing up is 400 books, and that lowers the price per copy. So then we actually start making some profit off of the venture, which would be awesome. for Jack and Sean, I'll be making some money off the sale of the art, but yeah, for Jack and Sean and Dave, because we're gonna do a 4-way split on the profit.
Okay, I kind of figured it was going to be one of those. You're going to start deli slicing the money coming in, but that's the way all these Kickstarters work. Where Dave's talking about doing service and health Kickstarters to pay those guys, and I already told him, like, I don't want any money for anything I was involved with, because like we did 4 coronavirus books.
Okay, yeah.
I think we're up to 5. It was one of those. It was, we can do a free book in a week, and we did it. And then it was, we can do another free book in a week, and it was all right. And then, like, we're not doing this anymore. We're done. This is a dumb idea. It's way too stressful. And the week after that was Free Comic Book Day. I'm like, hey, can we get a book done by Saturday? And I asked on a Tuesday, and we managed to pull together and get it done. And then after that, it was just like, well, let's do another one just for the fun.
You know, but I think that worked. I think those were like the funniest Cerebus and Hell books in a while, because they're topical. Like, if you have that platform to be topical, why wouldn't you be?
Well, it's the one that gets me is, there's the Glamourpuss effect of, Glamourpuss was the fashion magazine that's so 6 months ago. And I think a lot of the service and health stuff, the problem is Dave's a year ahead. So, like, he's making a joke today, but it's not going to get printed for a year. And in a year, we're not going to remember, was that topic funny enough?
Yeah, I mean, I understand why he wants to be ahead, but it was the same problem with You Don't Know Jack. Is, we were writing that book, I think, before Trump got elected, or we were at least talking about it, and we were definitely writing it before he, like, Dave was mocking it up before he got inaugurated, at least. And then I was drawing it in like early 2017, and so at the time it was like, oh my god, this book's hilarious. And that's I mean, luckily all of the things that we're talking about in the book have, well, I shouldn't say luckily, unfortunately, all of the things that we're talking about in the book have escalated further, right, in the last 4 years. So I should say, luckily, the material hasn't become irrelevant, but it could become irrelevant very easily come November. And so that's like, thank goodness that this happened, where now I'm in control of being able to get the book out there, rather than like waiting for Dave. It's a promo for Strange Death, so it can't come out until Strange Death is gonna. It's like, no, that's why it's like, this book is getting printed and getting into people's hands before the election. Like it has to be. And that's why those COVID issues were so funny. Like my partner, she knows a little bit about Dave, just me like griping about, this thing isn't coming. Yeah. And, I was formed an opinion based on that, I guess. And I was showing her, like, especially the COVID pickup line stuff. And she was just losing it. And like, okay, you got me. We didn't realize that Dave probably didn't write those at the time, but.
Yeah, I think that was David Birdsong did the pickup lines. And that was one where, he'd make a strip, send it to the rest of us, and it's like, yes or no. And all of us, it was, like I'm actually writing a script and sending it to him, and he's got to assemble everything. But like when he does something, he just makes the script, sends it out, and we all respond just dying.
Yeah.
And the best part, I mean, it's all digital, so it doesn't matter where it goes, but we're like, thinking in the future of printing stuff, so like that 2-page spread is going to be the middle of the book, so it can be an actual page spread.
Yeah, that was. I mean, she was just cracking up and then saying, "You got me, Dave. You got me." Like not wanting to laugh at something that Dave wrote and just not being able to help it. So apparently, Dave still wrote it, but different David.
Well, it was. Everything we did got sent to Dave Sim, and if he didn't like it, it would get tweaked. Like there's stuff like the first Vark Wars, when it came out, I got my contributor copies and I'm reading it and I'm going, why is this joke changed? Why is this? And then I'm like, oh wait, that's right. We sent these up to Dave, and Dave tweaked them so that they, they're funny, but he tightened it just a little bit, and now it's really funny.
Yeah,
but I'm going, I don't remember this joke.
Yeah, there's a lot of that on You Don't Know Jack. I mean, mostly it was Dave writing it anyways, and then I would come back and try and make it more fair to Jack, I guess. Because like it was a constant thing during it. Like Dave was like, well, I can't write this part because I'm not a feminist, and like a feminist needs to write this, and then we tweak it to try and be more friendly to that outlook, and then he would be like, well, that's just not, like, you're messing up the structure of the joke or whatever. So now that it's in our control, luckily I can go back and make some of those minor changes that I wanted made in the book that it just wasn't worth arguing about, and so I left them. Now it's like, oh well, this is my version of the book. I can do whatever I want with it. Take out some of the longer winded passages that get a little cluttered, and we'll see. I mean, I guess we can release a digital version of maybe. Hey, kitty, I see a cat tail.
Yeah, he decided that he's going to be in the Zoom call, huh, Cat?
Yeah.
Is that how this works? You're not. Well, actually, you're not even allowed in this room. I left the door open.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say hello. Say
Hello.
goodbye.
What's the kitty's name?
That's Buddy.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, he was we had a friend that had a litter of kittens, and would we like to adopt one? And I'm like, yeah, I want a cat. And then my wife came back with, it's going to cost $250. I'm like, that cat better be the best cat I've ever owned.
What's a
He's
big
certainly
cat?
the most expensive. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you guys could do, the Dave edition of, these are all of Dave's jokes. These are the ones that Carson cringed at. These are the ones that Jack, you sent to Jack, and Jack went, no, don't put that joke in.
Well, yeah, actually, that's not a bad idea. Maybe we'll add a tier to the campaign, just a digital of all of Dave's. Well, when you post this, people, let me know if you're interested in that. All of Dave's mock-ups. And then
you can make it a stretch reward. If you guys get to X number of dollars, everybody gets a digital copy.
Yeah, that would be cool. That's a good idea.
Apparently that's how Kickstarters work now, is you put a stretch reward in that somebody really wants, and you'll get 40 grand.
Okay, we'll do that. It will be digital, but the other thing we could do is we could put the digital completed version, like all of Dave's mock-ups, and then the version that I have on my computer that's like ready to print right now. and then we would send out the actual, like me and Sean are going to be working over the next couple of weeks to make small little tweaks that I think is going to improve the book. Yeah, that would be good. We'll do that. We'll make that a stretch goal. I'll talk to Sean about that.
Yeah, now Sean's going to hear this and he's going to start pulling his hair out going, Matt, you ruined it, you moron.
No, I'll make the PDF. I'll just put it all together and make a PDF.
I don't know if Sean's going to have to do something with the Kickstarter to create a stretch goal. You know, it's a simple stripped down campaign, and now we're making it complicated.
No, I have access to the campaign too, so I can do like when we're doing the custom tiers for the original art, I'm making those. So hopefully it's no work for Sean. But yeah, the other thing is there was probably closer to 3 issues worth of mock-ups from Dave, and I picked and chose. So there's mock-ups and just scripts that didn't even have images with them for material beyond what's in the book. Yeah, that'll be good. We'll do that. I'll make a digital version of like everything Dave produced. And then there was like some tweaks in between his scripts and what I sent him. I don't know. I'll just stuff everything in a CBR PDF, and if people want to look at it,
you're gonna have to do an image of the cover smaller than size, and then all these little bits sticking out behind it, and make that the cover of the PDF.
Yeah, that would be worth it. That would be good. Sorry. Yeah, that would be good. That would be interesting to have that on the record. That happened with the Hermitage Awesomes catalog too. Is Dave told me we need an art catalog. I was like, well, you're the designer, man. Like, you're the writer. You send me what you want, and then I'll put it together in the computer. And he's like, well, I don't have time. Like, I need you to go make this. So, well, it sounds like what's happening to you guys on Cerebus and Hell, where like I just went and made a whole catalog. I had never even seen one of those things before. So he sent me one in the mail, and I'm looking at it, and I didn't know that he wanted it to be funny either. So I'm putting it together, and I'm thinking like, there's just no way I can write one of these seriously. And I don't know what he wants. So I'm just going to like talk shit in it. Like, I'm just going to like, it was like, I couldn't imagine why anyone who had never read a book would want to be buying art, especially from Dave. I get it. But from me, like, no one knows who I am. So why are we going to be selling this stuff, and like, how much money am I getting? So I was just writing all this stuff. Like, I don't know, like one with stippling. Like, do you have an OCD family member who you hate? Buy this piece of stippling and ask them how many dots there are. It's like the only reasons I could think of why anyone would buy this stuff from someone they'd never heard of. And then Dave got it, and apparently that attitude was exactly what he was looking for. But then he went through and rewrote the whole thing anyways. So maybe we could release like Carson's worst version.
Well, I mean, it was one of those I never understood. Okay, so you're doing a mock art catalog for an actual art auction. Like, that was the way it was. It always sounded to me, it was like, Dave's going to auction off all the art. That's part of the Solar promotion, was we're going to do an art auction. We're going to sell all the art. And here's a catalog of all the art where we make fun of ourselves. And I'm just like, I think there's a disconnect there. I get you did the book. You're trying to promote the book. This auction's to help raise money because you did the book. But now we're making fun of ourselves for auctioning. And I'm like, at that point, I'm just like, all right, Dave, whatever you're going to do, when it comes out, I will promote it as much as I can. I will help. But at the same time, I'm scratching my head going, mainly because I know I can't afford any of it, so I'm not going to be bidding anyway on any auctions.
Yeah.
So that's where you get this idea makes no sense, but hey, have fun storming the castle, whatever I can do to help.
Yeah, I mean, I was always torn. Like, when I finished, I think it was 24 pages of bridging material for volume 1, right? All the stuff with Jack in it, in the comic store, finding these issues of Strange Death of Alex Raymond and being like, where are these? What are these? Why is this number 3 all of a sudden? When I finished that, it was like, okay, sweet. Like, he can send it to IDW and we can publish it now, right? Like, great. Like, this is what I signed up for, is to help him get his book out. I wasn't even necessarily planning on being involved past that. You know, he was talking about Carl Stevens and me, like, both doing artwork on it back and forth, depending on who had time, or
Right.
I just wanted to see volume 1 come out, and then he was like, no, you're doing the rest of it. I was like, okay, that's cool. But I thought, like, you know, we get volume 1 out now, it's done. And then it was like, well, okay, we're gonna have these artist editions, and it was like that come out before the book.
I went back through all the Patreon updates that Dave did, and like one of the very first ones I got is he's talking about Ted Adams wants him to do, they're going to hire a PR firm. And Dave's going to go on a tour of the entire country, talking, going to shops, going to bookstores, doing signings. And then he's talking about artist editions. And I'm like, this is 6 years ago. He's doing a 6-year, for 6 years, Dave has had this idea of, we're going to do artist editions. We're going to do a big tour. And I'm like, this isn't, I thought this was something that evolved naturally, but no, this goes back to almost day one of Dave had this plan of, we're going to do these 2 things. And everybody's kind of looking around like, Dave, why are you doing an artist edition for a book that hasn't been released yet?
Yeah. And see, I didn't know that, because like I had been reading a number of, for some reason around the time I contacted Dave, I just got really interested in him again. Like, I'd read Cerebus all the way through, and I loved, I mean, obviously the reason I'm working on Strange Death, or working with Dave in the first place, is I loved Glamourpuss. I love Cerebus too. It's, one of the best contributions to the field as far as I'm concerned. But Glamourpuss, like the art in that, just like, oh my God, it was amazing. It spoke to me. I learned a lot from it. And so I was in it for that. And yeah, sorry, I got lost in my train of thought there, but it was just about, what were we talking about?
Well, one of my problems with Glamourpuss, I like Glamourpuss. I have a page in the second to last issue that I wrote that, as I told Dave, I'm like, so how do I put this down on my resume that I plotted and co-scripted a page? And he never really responded to the question.
Yeah.
Because he called me one day. And like, I'm in my apartment and the phone rings and I'm like, what the hell, Ontario? Who the hell be calling me from Ontario? Because I know people all over, And I answer and it's, hey Matt, it's Dave. And I'm like, I hit the floor. I'm like, what? Why is Dave Sim calling me? He's like, I really like the latest mini comic you sent me. Could you pitch me on Glamourpuss, a 5-page story? And I'm like, immediately I start getting ideas, and I'm telling him on the phone, he's like, write it down, send it to me, and I'll take a look. And I sent him a pitch, and it was horrible. And like, even I know, looking back now, I look at it, this pitch was just, it was a good idea, but not for Glamourpuss.
Yeah.
And I had sent I had a second pitch that had, it was the secret origin of Glamourpuss, and I had a number of photos that I got from my uncle from the 70s of Richard Nixon.
Okay.
Like AP photos. My uncle worked at a newspaper, and he was in the setup department. And when they would get AP photos in, if he liked them, he'd print out copies for his own personal files. So I have a bunch of, like, he had a bunch of NASA drawings for the moon landing, and so I got all these files. So I took all these Nixon ones, and so it's the secret origin of Glamourpuss, and basically it's the pitch was that Glamourpuss came about in the 70s because Nixon wanted to recreate Captain America, and I forget who it was. One of the other political figures from the 70s that's in a photo of Nixon suggested, couldn't this person be a woman?
Oh, okay.
And the costume is redesigned by J. Edgar Hoover, because I found a cosplay photo of a woman as Captain America, but like it's lingerie. So she's holding the shield and she's got the stars and stripes, but it's like a corset, and she's wearing stockings and garters. And in the script, the line was, The J. Edgar Hoover's costume was rejected because test audiences thought it looked like it was designed by a 75-year-old closeted transvestite. And so I sent these 2 pitches in, and Dave's response was, the closest you got to being funny was this line about the transvestite. And in my head, when I wrote it, I'm like, this is the over the line. Dave's not going to like this. This is going to be the joke that kills it. And so Dave sent me this letter saying, not funny enough, and it, stabbed through the heart, like, oh, what are you talking about? And I came up with Cerebus TV, the opening. Dave's got Glamourpuss artwork, and it's actually proto-Glamourpuss artwork. It's stuff that it was the original cover to Collected Letters 3, and it's pretty girls and other subjects. And Avril Lavigne is one of the girls that he drew. And so when you're watching Cerebus TV, he's the camera pans in and it's doing a close up, and I'm like, he's got Avril Lavigne. I bought an issue of Vogue because I'm gonna write Glamourpuss. I need to buy a fashion magazine. It's a spread on Taylor Swift. I'm like, he's got Avril Lavigne, he's got Taylor Swift. I will do a bit that that's got this. So I wrote this 5-page script and I sent it in, and I never heard back from him. And then in one episode of Cerebus TV, there's artwork of my characters that I threw into this script, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's an iguana and a bear. What's going on here? And so I faxed Dave a screen grab from the YouTube video going, what is this? And he's like, oh yeah, you're in the book now. And I'm like, okay. And so he sent me a check for $25. He sent me tracing paper for the page and all the photos he printed out to do this page. And I'm like, oh, cool. But it's one of those, like, my name's not in the credits at the front of the book. What's going on? I'm not going to be in the Grand Comic Book database as being, the plotter and co-scripter of one page of the second to last issue of a book that got canceled the next issue because nobody was buying it.
Well, it's on the record now.
Yeah, I mean, well, and the other one that I love is the page before that is a photo of Dave, Kyla, I forget her last name, Stu Mentz from he was a photographer who's taken pictures of Kyla for Dave to use in Glamourpuss, and Eddie Kahana.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, it's Dave and Eddie together in this issue because it was the last signing. Eddie went to the last signing, and Dave got this photo, and he ended up using it. And every time I looked at the issue, I'm like, Eddie's taking over for Dave. I ended up taking over for Tim on A Moment of Service. Like, at the time, we were just 2 fans of Cerebus and Dave that just randomly got put into this one comic. And now, 10 years later, look where we are.
There's Dave's comic art metaphysics, right?
And that's, whenever Dave talks about this stuff, I'm like, everybody goes, Dave's nuts. And then you start looking at it and you're like, well, there's something there.
It's the closer you get to him, he has a way of making it seem real, at least. You reminded me of where I was going, though,
okay.
With the Glamourpuss stuff. So what I was trying to say, and then I got distracted by how much I liked Glamourpuss, was beyond that, I'm not someone who's like read everything Dave wrote. I wasn't a Patreon person. So when I contacted Dave, there was just some reason all of a sudden I got interested in Dave Sim again. I talk about that in the artist commentary thing that people are buying as the digital download. But all of a sudden I was just like reading a bunch of stuff, and thinking about him right before and that's kind of that comic art metaphysics, if you buy into it thing, like, why did all of a sudden I get obsessed with Dave Sim? It's like he pulled me into the event horizon a little bit. So I had no idea about that. I had no idea he was planning these artist editions from the get-go. I thought he was trying to get a book out, because Dave's always said, I'm doing this, and then it happens, and then he puts it out. Like, I mean, if there's anyone who has a track record of getting a book completed, right? Like, I'm making 300 issues and it's coming out and it's going to be done by this point. Like, so I thought we'd get the book done and he'd go to IDW, and then all of a sudden these plans that I didn't know because I wasn't following the Patreon, to me, it just seemed like he was making them up on the fly. And he explained it to me as like this advertising scaffolding that he had. And I said, okay, well, like I've never self-published. I didn't become the most successful self-publisher, right? I haven't figured out how to sustain myself on my art for the time I was a high school dropout until into my, mid 60s now, right? So it's like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'll tell you why I don't think it makes any sense, but it's your book, it's your project. Like, and then it got to the point where I just said, look, I have my own career that I'm trying to get to, and my success in that has to do with me having my artwork in galleries. I need that on my resume to apply for jobs. And I've spent all this time working on this comic, which is great for the resume when I can say I have a book forthcoming or a book published. But now that nothing's happening, like, I just can't work on it anymore until something's published. And I'm not trying to force your hand, or sometimes he would act like I was trying to force his hand. And it's like, no. Like, I'll be here 5 years from now whenever this all works out for you, like, call me back. But until then, I got to go make paintings. I got to have shows. I got to focus on teaching, because that's what I do. That's what I want to do. That's how I want to.
I think part of the problem is everybody's used to the monthly or mostly monthly service of, hey, next month book's coming out, next month the book's coming out, or even Glamourpuss, every 2 months the book's on the shelves. And like David freely and told everybody that, the strange death of Alex Raymond, he's, it's going to be perfect. He's not letting it out of his hands until he feels it's perfect. It's like, that's great, but when it was just Dave by himself, yeah, sure. You want to take 6 years to do a book? Take 6 years to do a book. But now you bring Carson in, and hey, you'll draw whatever he wants you to draw. You'll redraw whatever he wants you to draw. But now, hey, it's been, how long, and the book's not ready. And instead of saying, hey, Carson, the book's not ready, I'll give you a call when we're ready to go to print it. When Dave had when Eddie sent me the announcement from Dave of, okay, I'm done on Strange Death of Alex Raymond, I'm not, as Dave said, he's effed everybody so badly, and for the first time, where this is the worst he's ever screwed up. And I'm immediately going, hey, I still support Dave. I'd sent money for a fundraising edition. I told cash the check and keep it. I don't care if I get the book or not, keep going type thing. And then then you commented of, wait, the book's dead. And I'm going, oh man, I forgot about Carson. It's one of those that, I feel bad because like, oh yeah, I forgot about Carson, but it happened a couple times, like with the signing of the fundraising editions of, oh yeah, Carson's going to sign these. And you popped in going, I am. And it's like, yeah, Dave, remember the guy that picked up the pen because you can't draw anymore? It's like, I think you're forgetting about somebody, Dave.
Well, I mean, I would have done it. I just didn't know.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's not that you wouldn't have done it. It's just that he forgot to say something. Like, instead of sending an email to everybody on the Patreon and having me post it on a moment of service, maybe say, put this up on Friday. On Thursday, I'm going to call Carson and let him know what's going on.
Well, and I mean, throughout most of working with him, we were pretty good about that. He'd send faxes to Sean or Eddie, and they'd forward them to me, or he'd call. That was the first time where I was like, I think because a lot of the times when he called with stuff, I just was like, I'm not interested. It was like, go to the Heritage Auctions office in San Francisco and just like walk in, like, and check out their operations, and it was like, well, you're talking to like the vice president. Why don't you set up an appointment for me? And then they know I'm coming. Like, they're probably like on, story 86 of some big ass building in like one office. It's not like the warehouse where they got all the stuff there. I didn't like, I didn't know what he was expecting. And I was like, well, I'm gonna be, I take students over to look at museums and stuff. And like, and friends, we have groups. I said, I'll keep an eye out for it. But so I think he just got tired of having those contentious phone calls with me, maybe.
Well, I mean, it's one of those. I'm trying to see it from his point of view. Hey, go, random guy, go show up at this office and say you're working with me. It doesn't. There's no way of saying it that doesn't sound slightly crazy.
I don't
Like
know if he. I don't know that he wanted me to say that I was working with him. Even just he wanted me to go see what they do, and I didn't know what I was supposed to be looking for. I don't know. Same with the auction catalog. You're right. Like what he wanted it to be a legitimate auction through Heritage Auctions, but like with the catalog that says Hermited Awesomes, and I mean it's funny. I think the product is funny. I'm proud of the parody we made. There's a bit of writing.
Why are you parodying something you're trying to make money at? It's the thought process. I mean,
well, I mean, I get it. Like, and when you guys read the book, I think it will become more clear. Like those of you who get the digital download, like I wrote a piece for the book about why people should be buying my art. Like, who is this guy? Why should you be buying stuff? And approaching it from like my experience in the fine art world, where collectors like Charles Saatchi will buy relatively unknown artists, a bunch of them, so you buy them cheap. He did this with the young British artists, so like Damien Hirst being the biggest name out of that group. I don't know if you're aware of him, but in the UK, everyone knows Damien Hirst. He's like equivalent to Andy Warhol or something, just huge name guy now. He takes his own work to auction out for 200 million or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous. But at the time, like Charles Saatchi is buying these young artists straight out of graduate school and for I don't know how much, but not much. And then he creates this collection and then has a museum show and calls it the Young British Artists. Here's the new wave of British artists. And so overnight, Saatchi has made every artist in his collection important, and now he can flip a Damien Hirst for, bought it for 10,000, flips it for 10 million. And right. So we were taking that approach a bit in the book, like, hey, this is the first time anyone's ever done this. In art collection, like the idea of provenance is important. The story behind how you got the art and who else has had it, like, who else has owned the art, that contributes to the value. So we were purposely playing with the collector being involved in this weird thing gives it a better story. And then by buying Carson's work for however a couple $100 you get, but then contributing to this weirdness, then you're going to up your value. So I mean, I get the logic of it. It was funny. I just, it never seemed like Heritage was actually on board, and we're making these full, I mean, really like ready to go tomorrow products just to show them what we're thinking. Because and Dave's not crazy. He understands that he's going to take it to someone and they're going to say you're crazy if he just explains it to him. So in that, and I face this in my artwork too. I remember being in school and we'd have to do critiques every month or something. And a lot of my work takes a long time to finish. I can't just do something in a week and put it up on the wall. And so I would be critiquing like halfway done ideas and trying to explain it, and people just couldn't see it. But then as soon as it was done on the wall, then they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. Like, so I think it's the same idea. Like, he has an idea of how this could go really well, but no one is going to understand it until it's actually in front of them. So we had to put all of this work in ahead of time. And that's how I got that's why I kept going for a while with like, I'd like to get back to my painting, but we're working on this catalog. But I kind of see where you're going with it. you know, after lengthy conversation about why in the heck are we doing this. And then, you know, it just, when he got to the point of making the You Don't Know Jack TV show promo thing, I was like, okay, again, the pitch is fantastic. I mean, I think it would be a great TV show, but this isn't, I can't spend time on this because it's just, after this is done, there's going to be something else.
Well, and as I said in an email to you, the worst someone can do is say yes, because then you have to do it. You know, you could pitch a TV show, and if everybody says no, okay, we tried, we failed. But like, if someone had said yes, and like, say Netflix picked up You Don't Know Jack as a TV show, they're gonna want you and Dave helping with the TV show. And I can see Dave already going, "Oh, go ask Carson; he'll take care of that." And you going, freaking out.
Oh, I would. Well, I mean, if I'm getting paid for it for a TV show, yeah, heck yeah, I would do it. Like Netflix option. You don't. I mean, I don't. The other thing that's really frustrating, and we posted an update about it. I posted it in addition to the update that Sean made yesterday on the campaign, where Jack, you know, like I contacted Jack, like once I got the permission to print the book, I said, hey, we finally got the book back. I'm going to kickstart it. Like, can you help me promote it? Let's make some money finally. And she was like, yeah, it's sweet, you know? And so I made the little Kickstarter social media thing and gave it to her to share. She shared it and said, like, Dave Sim has granted me and Carson Grubaugh the rights to myself. And then it was, you know, so there was always that, which, like, with the TV show, bothered me, because like there's some stuff that there's some animation I saw for the first time yesterday that we're going to put up for the campaign, that Dave was doing some drawing. He like made animation, you know, like a 6-second, he did like 6 or 7 drawings and they're on a loop. And so
Okay.
and it's like this jiggling ass with the name Jack on the underwear, and that was like the, you know, the thing for the show, which, like, she was never told that I think I probably like messaged her on Instagram and was like, hey, Dave's just letting you know, Dave's talking about making a TV show, and we split the, I don't know, whatever he proposed in terms of who owns what. And usually when I talk to Jack about that kind of stuff, she just ignores it, because like her experience till now is it's all talk and nothing happens, I think, is what's going on. And
Right.
so I'd always get, yeah, okay, that's cool. And then, you know, nothing past that. So that was another reason I didn't do the TV show, is it was like, okay, like, you're promoting this TV show, like, are we actually expecting Jack
To sign off on her likeness being used on a TV show? Like
is she gonna act in the first episode? Or
I mean, yeah, I mean,
like, so it just seemed like she should be more involved in that conversation than she. And I think he said that to you when he talked to you last week. He never spoke to her or anything.
yeah, I mean,
There was
it's one of those. On the one hand, the character Jack getting adapted to a TV show, whatever, yeah, that makes sense. But in the real world, Jack is a person who owns herself. I mean, you know, it's not like she signed away her likeness rights forever. It was a conditional thing.
Well, and it's like Dave Sim world, so there's no signature, there's no contract, there's no, I never even.
It would be, you know, it was a tentative agreement of, okay, we're gonna do, you know, Jack's gonna be in Strange Death of Alex Raymond as Jack. You know,
Yeah.
her likeness is being used in this creative working, and I understand, you know, Dave, the way Dave works is, once the book got published, Jack would be allowed to do whatever she wanted to do with the stuff she's involved with. But it, you know, that's Dave Simworld. In the real world, it's you're using this woman's likeness. It at work. I work in a factory, and they came by one day to take photos of one of the machines because we have 5 machines hooked up to 4 robots. It's like a couple $1 million project, and they're taking photos of it because the company that sold us all the machinery is going to use it as an ad to sell more machines.
Mm-hmm.
And they walk in and they're going to take photos, and I'm like, "What's going on?" Like, "Oh, we're taking photos for a magazine." I'm like, "Oh, I'm not involved." They're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "My name, likeness, and biographical information is for sale, but not at the prices I'm being paid."
Yeah.
And everybody just kind of looked at me. I'm like, "I understand likeness rights. You want to put my photo in a magazine so that the company that we buy from can make money, fine, but I want to cut." You're not just.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pose for a photo as some random factory employee. And everybody, it's come up a couple times because it's happened a couple times, and everybody every time is like, "What are you talking about? You're insane." And I'm like, "It's you own your image, guys. You can't just appear on a billboard for the company as come work at the company, without knowing what you're doing." And they're like, "You don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, "This is why I'm a comic book fan, and you guys watch NASCAR."
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I personally like Dave's way of operating because that's just my personality. Is as an artist, I'm not like when I did these photographs of Jack, I didn't even think about to like print out and get a signature of, we have like text messages or whatever that I'm like, "Hey, it's like, to me, it's obvious that she agreed to do it." And it's just, I do things with people. I just have that artist mentality of like, I just want to do the thing, and like the business mentality. So I get it.
It goes back to, in Dave's world, everybody agrees, everybody has rights, the creator's bill of rights, basically, everyone owns what they worked on. And that's a beautiful way of doing it because that way, okay, Dave's not going to work on the book anymore. Carson, now you have full rights to do whatever you need to do, which is the way it would work. Instead of like Alan Moore's 1963 series where everybody owns a specific chunk of it, but nobody can reprint it without the other guys signing off on it. And so the book is out of print and no one's ever going to see it again. So yeah, I like Dave's way of doing stuff. I just also understand that that's Dave's side, and on the other side is Walt Disney, where we own you. You signed this.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily like Walt Disney's way of doing it, but I understand it's there and it's been enshrined, and these are the channels. So when Dave says we're going to do a TV show, I'm just thinking he's going to run into the corporate structure of, well, do you have signature, signed and dated paperwork from Jack when when she agreed, when the pictures were taken, yada yada yada. And so that's, I personally agree with Dave. Everybody's free to do what they need to do. Let's get the product out. Let's work together and make something. Not have 15 meetings about what color shirt should Jack wear on the poster for the TV show.
Yeah, but also like with this idea of the TV show, and this is what I was saying, why I was real uncomfortable with it. Like they started taking the photographs that I shout out to Dawes, my friend Devin Avant, goes by the name Dawes. I'm gonna make a post about him. He came and took most of the photographs for me. He was also a student of mine at the same university that Jack was. So like when I went and did the photo shoot, Devin took all the photographs for me. I kind of just directed it. Actually, what happens is I took all the photographs the first time when I was doing the tryout, and then I thought I was going to be drawing Dave's models after that. I thought it was just a tryout, but he liked Jack enough. And he was like, she had the striped shirt and like everything you would want from the foot. I don't even think I told her. Yeah, I told her to wear a striped shirt. I think I asked for that. So then he was like, well, go back and finish the sequence with her. And I was like, Dave, that was in Virginia and I'm back in California now. I was out there for a year and now I'm back. And he was like, it's okay, I'll fly you out there. And so I contacted Jack and said, hey, Dave wants more. If I flew out on whatever, November 16th, I think, could we meet up again? And so then I stayed with Devin Dawes, and he did the photography as well. So I have all these photographs that had been given to Dave that he used to do the mock-ups, right? And those photographs were then being used. And I think we're going to post some of the stuff that Oliver Simonson, Dave had Oliver working, or did I get his last name right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. I was just thinking Walt Simonson also. Yeah, Oliver was working on the video stuff for this. Dave had him doing the video stuff for this. And we're going to post some of that, I think, including Dave's animation. But so they're using these photos of Jack that she had given me permission to make drawings of. But there was never this idea that I would be publishing the photographs.
Right.
And especially not making a TV show out of them that she it was just, it seemed like Dave felt more ownership over her likeness than I was comfortable with.
And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, was that, Jack is Jack. You can't just say, oh, we're gonna do whatever we want. It's like, that's where the Disney stuff comes in. Of you need to have everything in writing. Did she agree that you could make a TV show?
And you could have a TV call showed you don't know Jack, and it's a comic store manager and Dave's whole pitch. That's fine, but she doesn't need to be, her likeness doesn't need to be a part of that. You wouldn't really say it's a spin out of the book.
Yeah.
You could use the book as a pitch, kind of, but when you guys read the book, you'll see it's not something where you go, oh yeah, this could be a TV show. It's like a separate idea that Dave had that I think is a fantastic idea. It's hilarious. And I think it would be great if it got made the way he wanted it to be made. It would be like the thing I told Dave is, I said, I think it would be great if this actually happens and we wind up getting the first industry award for a TV show that promotes diversity and inclusivity. That Dave Sim gets that.
Yeah.
The TV show that he made gets that would just be hilarious. Because the idea of the show, I don't know how much people understand it, but the idea was that Jack is a practicing Wiccan witch, or pagan, I don't know. She practices occult magic. And so the idea is that she's messing around with that and creates this Groundhog Day loop where she has to relive the same day over and over again, trying to stop this terrible thing that happens. But every time she relives that day, she's in another reality, and she's a different combination of all the different identities that you would put on an intersectional feminist chart of identity. So one episode you would have gay, male, Hispanic, Catholic Jack, who's a comic store manager in that alternate reality, and the actor who plays it would have to be someone who's actually male, gay, Hispanic, and Catholic. So Dave called it the Black Panther model, and where everyone on the production is you have to have, I think that's where he thought he was being funny, is that could you really staff an entire production with that specific of an identity? But okay, you'd say, all right, well, they have to at least be all a Hispanic director and Hispanic production.
And that would be, more, he's making fun of inclusiveness, but you would actually be inclusive if you did it.
Yeah, well, and if each episode was done that way, like here's the, you know, the Japanese transsexual male Jack, uh, whatever religious affiliation. Yeah, and then you actually got an actor. You would. That's what I thought was great about it is you would be promoting. You know, you'd be opening up these out. Every episode would open up a job for a time for that chunk. It's just I think what Dave was trying to do is make like a Trojan horse a little bit to try and prove his point that if you're hiring only based on that criteria, first off, if the criteria is that specific, like you have to meet everything in that criteria. Like you can't just have an all Japanese director, Japanese writer. It has to be like a Japanese trend. You're not going to be able to hire enough to staff
Right.
the whole show, right? So I think that was part of the point he was trying to make. But if you loosened it up a little bit and you said, well, it's a all like, you know, kind of Japanese or all trans
Well,
episode or
if it was 2 or 3 out of 7, it still would count instead of these 7 things you have to have.
or you say the lead actor has to be you get this lead actor and then you base the episode around their actual identity, right? And then the rest of the staff could be people who check off 1 or 2 of the boxes and
I mean,
and it's a good idea.
It's not a bad idea. It's I'm looking at the ridiculous Dave level of it's got to be these 7 things, and you're never going to find a key grip that's all 7. It's like but
Exactly.
a key grip.
Yeah, but that's where he's. I see what he's doing, and that in and of itself is funny to me.
Right.
Because on the other side, you do get people who are going that deep with it as well, and like the people that would be the polar opposite of Dave, you get those same kind of demands, right? There's not enough like all these 20 things, key grips in Hollywood, and so Dave, I get it. It was funny, but like if you meet in the middle of that, then you're actually doing a lot of good for a lot of people potentially, and it's a good idea. And then every episode, like the way that they try and solve the problem of solving this bad thing, you could get people really representing their outlook on the world, and it could be a good vehicle for like a bunch of different people having their say, which is what You Don't Know Jack, in my opinion, was about. Is like, here's Dave over here on, and here's Jack over here, like, polar opposites, and me, like, probably a pretty centrist figure.
Well, I mean, it's one of those, like, well, it's here's Dave, here's Jack. They have nothing in common except for they're both carbon-based life forms. And here's Carson in the middle, also carbon-based. I mean, they
both love comic books, and like Jack is like totally willing to let us do this with her image, and so there is a common assumption of like we can talk about this kind of stuff without like Jack doesn't want Dave canceled.
Well, and it's one of those, yes, there are vast differences, but there are also similarities, and Jack's willing, it's not like Dave's name came up and Jack did a basic Google search and came back with, Carson, I don't want you to remember I exist anymore. I mean, she was willing to say, okay, yeah, I'll work with Dave, because she's not being prejudicial. Dave's not being prejudicial. I mean, that it's open-mindedness. That's the part I like, is that it, for all the closed-mindedness Dave has about things, he's very open-minded on most everything. And he's willing to look at viewpoints that aren't his. And that's the problem that we run into as a society, is everybody goes, my way or the highway, and it's not that.
Yeah, he'll just tell you what he thinks. But I mean, he always qualifies, I think. as far as I can tell. He just is lengthy about it and words it very sternly, but
Yeah, that's
and
I've gotten complaints because the last please hold was, what happened with the strange death of Alex Raymond, and I've gotten people going, I'm not watching 14 YouTube videos to find out. Just tell me. It's like, well, Dave hit the wall and he doesn't want to work on it anymore.
yeah, and
But
which
yet he also says he's hoping to get back to it someday, and I'm like, so I think it's a case of he hit the wall and he doesn't want to publish. He still wants to work on the book.
I don't know. I I mean, luckily, yes. Luckily, he is very serious about his commitment to, like, if you worked on it, you can do your version of it. And as far as I can tell, that means that I can publish his pages as well, not just the ones I worked on.
I, I,
Um,
I must. That's the way the facts read to me, was that you were allowed to do that. I mean,
yeah, and like he's redoing Spawn 10 now, right? So that's obvious.
that's a well-known secret.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
he's they're going back. They're doing Todd sent him the black and white art, and they're going to be, if anybody asks, I know nothing,
yeah.
absolutely nothing. But yes, there's going to be a version of Spawn Ted coming from Dave soonish.
But it's going to have Todd's art in it in the same way that my version of Strange Death will have Dave's art in it.
Yes.
But I'll tell you this, like when we were talking to Ethan Van Sciver, right? When Dave got involved with that, I mean, you were involved with that too, like the whole
Yeah.
storm that was. Um, I had called Ethan and had a chat with him, and what he really want, because I was thinking, like, You Don't Know Jack would be a really good book to come out through that, since it's kind of that controversial, potentially. I shouldn't say controversial. I don't think it should be controversial, but I'm sure it will be. Um, because it makes fun of some of the stuff that it seems like the people in comic gates are irritated about. I thought that would be a good way to do it, maybe, or at least that he would be kind enough to promote it for us. But his whole thing was like, no, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. I don't want any politics involved at all. But if you and Dave come up with something else, and he kept just stressing, like, go make a superhero book. You and Dave make a superhero book and I'll promote the hell out of it. And it's like, well, neither of us want to do that. So one thing that Dave had said is, hey, I have the rights to Spawn 10. Why don't you go redraw the entire Spawn 10 issue in photorealist style? And we'll just re-release Spawn 10 photorealist Carson version. And I was like, I don't, like, part of photorealism is you go take a photograph. Like, I'm gonna dress up. I'm not. I mean, maybe
You're not going to dress up like Spawn, and more importantly, you're not going to go to every fabric store in 3 counties to get red fabric to make a cape.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe Al Williamson and Alex Raymond and these guys that we're talking about were that talented where they could come up with something out of their brain and make it look reasonably like it had a photographic source. But I'm not that talented. I have zero ability to picture things in my head. Like, I don't see things in my head and try and draw them on the paper. If I start doodling, I can make it look like that, but I don't have an idea ahead of time. It's just gonna follow the lines until it looks like something. So if something's going to look realistic coming out of my hand, I gotta have a photograph. And that's an admission of a weakness on my part. Once I have the photograph, like, fine, I have no worries about the results. But yeah, there's no way I could go take, like, Todd McFarlane's art on Spawn 10 and just, like, do a photorealistic version of it. I would have to go photograph
Somebody in a skin-tight leotard.
Yeah, like, so I was like, I don't know. So he's been looking at that for a while. So, I mean, I hope he makes a bunch of money on it. But I love that that leads to, okay, I can, and where he burned out on Strange Death of Alex Raymond, page 21 of volume 3, where he burned out, the visual that is on that page is perfect for me saying this is where Dave went too far down the rabbit hole and quit. And I can then, and it's in the story, like those bridging sequences with Jack, it bridges from Jack to me. So I'm already in the book and Dave's in the book, right? Like we're characters in the book. And so it's perfectly set up for me to say, like, basically take Dave's role and say, this is where Dave went too far down the rabbit hole and quit. This project just got too big. I mean, he said that to you last week, right? It was like he referenced the Underwater by Chester Brown, I think.
Right.
And said the project got too big. And too big to make money, at least is what he was saying. But I think it got too big.
Well, one of the things that always got me is because supporting the Patreon, you're getting updates where Dave's, hundreds and hundreds of words and pages of commentary on photorealistic comic strips, and he freely admits that it's going to be 3 lines in one panel of one page. It's like, but there might be something further down that path, so he has to go down to the end of it and then circle back. And I can see how that just would be a draining to me, writing all this commentary that he's hoping it's going to end up it's going to get posted somewhere, someplace. I was reading it. I'm like, at this point, I need to get a copy of whatever photorealistic strip it is and be reading along, because you're reading his commentary and you're going, there's no way 3 panels that big have what Dave sees in it. And I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's there, but it's one of those, that's where as a fan, I'm going, it's a mountain of text. And I can see why, after a while you get burnt out of how do you distill all this into 2 lines?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, like you were talking about the thing with you and Eddie, and then now like look at you guys, right?
Right.
When you get, me and Sean call it the Dave Sim vortex. Like all of this comic metaphysics stuff seems like a load of hooey. And you listen to Dave and what he says and anything he's read and what he claims, and it sounds like a load of hooey. And like most of me still wants to say it's a load of garbage, right? It's like, but when you start working on the book, it just starts showing up in your life in a way that you start going, And I get it, like, okay, this thing is, I'm reading about and studying this thing a lot, so now this is on my mind and my pattern seeking animal is going to associate. But it happens so strongly in a lot of different ways, and ways that you can't control. And even if it's not like some metaphysical thing, right? It's just your ability to take the things around you and narrativize them, right? Like make narrative out of the incoming information. Dave is such a good writer that he's going to be able to narrativize anything. And once you start, like it's Ulysses by James Joyce, is I can say the word blue, and then I can I call it loose linearity, because each step is a linear step, right? Like I'll go from blue to like BB King, and that's a linear step, and then BB King to BB gun, that's a linear step, but you wind up with a web instead of a linear hierarchical progression. Right. So normally people would say that's a non-linear, but each step is a linear sensible step. And that's like Ulysses is that, right? That's what James Joyce was doing, is he was saying in any given instant in life, all of the rest of existence is there, because you can free associate your way from one thing to anything else and everything else. And so when you start playing this game in the way that we do in Strange Death of Alex Raymond, you run the risk of, okay, well, this links to this. And then you have this really beautiful, and I ran into this, and that, I mean, Dave mentioned it, that he has a list of notes from me, and I'll use those notes to finish the book if we get a publisher. My experience of what cluster of things that I saw in the book, particularly around the Greek, not goddess, but the witch Circe, that character shows up. I mean, in a way that's like, yeah, especially from what we do know, that Ward Green definitely knew Aleister Crowley and definitely was interested in the occult. There's some images in there where it's like, if you know anything about tarot, there's no way that he picked this specific this specific actual historical painting and had this like pose of the magician linking reality to the spiritual, like the narrative to the physical. Like, there's no way that he wasn't at least doing that on purpose in my mind. And then once you start doing that, then you see this other cluster and this other cluster. And I think Dave if he kept going, you get all of reality. You get existence itself. And the book can't be existence itself.
I mean, that's, I bought, years ago, I was at a museum and they had reproductions of a couple of newspapers for sale. So like it was John Glenn going into space the first time and Man Walking on the Moon. And so I bought them because they were on clearance for like $1. And I got them, and I'm like, I don't need these things in my life. I'll send them to Dave because knowing my luck, there's going to be some Sodor connection. And so I emailed Eddie and said, "Hey Eddie, do you think there might be something in here?" And he went, "Yeah, send them to me. I'll take a look. If I see something, I'll send it to Dave." And then I picked one up and was looking at it. It's Man Walks on the Moon, 1969. And I flipped the paper over, and at the bottom of the front page in the lower left-hand corner is Ted Kennedy in car crash. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, send this to Eddie. It's in my pile of stuff I got to send to Eddie because like it's gonna tie, because it's another car crash. Car crashes are a reoccurring motif in Sodor, and it also ties into Walking on the Moon, which ties back into Cerebus. So it's this, it's this giant web. It's all gonna. I look at it as like it's a giant pinball game. The ball's gonna go around, but it's all gonna come back down to the hole at the bottom.
But see, I'm not convinced at all. You can make it come back down to the hole at the bottom, but like if you're getting to the point where any
scrap of paper could be researched for the book, your book's getting way too researched.
Well, and like, oh, it's a car crash, it's relevant.
Well, not necessarily every car crash, but some car crashes are.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just like when you go, that's what I'm saying. Like you get this cluster of like famous people dying in car crashes. I don't know, like you can make that relevant and you can make it a compelling story. And I think Dave had that in, I don't remember which book in Cerebus. I've only read it twice through, but I think it's in around the time that he comes in during reads, and Alan Moore is in there, and he keeps saying like, it doesn't matter if it's real, it makes a good story.
Oh yeah, Alan Moore's thing, all stories are.
And so that's how I look at my association with Strange Death. Like, I'm not going to say there's these higher entities that we're dealing with, but I can make it make a good story. Like the stuff about Circe, I can make it make a good story. I can take these themes that I saw and make them seem spooky, right? And if that's real or not, if Ward Green actually invoked the green goddess Circe, Terra, Ostara, which have all showed up in my life while I was doing the research. The girl I was dating at the time got a tattoo of the green Buddha Terra on her chest. And I said, Tara, like Tara, that's the the uh, the plantation in Gone with the Wind, right? And anything to do with Margaret Mitchell is a big red flag for Strange Death. And I got a little weirded out by that. Like, and yeah, you're talking about Cersei and Terra, and those are green goddesses, and then Terra, just Earth, is typically called Terra, right? So there's this cluster that I'm paying attention to, and you go research what the green Terra Buddha is, and it's the feminist Buddha that like refuses to move on until female soul spirit creatures are put into the cycle, that they can also. She's like hanging on until females can start ascending up the ladder of I don't know, I'm not a Buddhist, but
Reincarnation
reincarnation, yeah, that they can eventually escape into nirvana or whatever. So very strong, like, feminist associate. I mean, it is like the feminist Buddha. And then someone else I knew had sent me a picture of a snake that they had that had a penis on the pattern on its head was a dick and balls. And they're like, look at my cute little snake I just got. And this is someone that I had used to date, had sent me this. And look at this snake with the dick and balls. And I thought, well, that's if you're like into the symbolism, you got snakes and fertility and like,
that's I've been going, that's kind of a red flag.
Yeah, when you're in the middle of this research where you're feeling like you may actually be dealing with a particular entity, and then I was like, oh, that's cute, and then like, well, what's its name? Ostara, Ostara, and what is Ostara? Easter, again, the green fertility goddess. And so like the people in my life were manifesting that's totally out of my control, right? It just shows up and I go, well, that seems really relevant to the story. So like you can make a good story that's creepy out of all that, right? Like that, I mean, that's not, I wouldn't put any of that in the book, but it makes it so that narrative pattern is how I would put it, instead of an entity. That narrative pattern of the green goddess and green goddess characters, you could say, well, Ward Green accidentally invoked one of these and pissed it off, and it went around wreaking havoc. But you can just as easily say, look, like a lot of these things that I was finding in the book is there's always a picture of a woman in front of like a painting or a poster of another woman that a guy's been obsessing over, and she just happens to look exactly like the woman in the two-dimensional representation. Okay, so there's a number of these things throughout all of the photorealist comic strips. And anytime you find one of those, the story is also going to have other potent references to what Dave is talking about. And so I started paying attention to these women in front of obviously it's all two-dimensional because it's drawing, but in the reality of the story, there's a real woman in front of a two-dimensional, in front of a two-dimensional representation of usually some other woman that she just happens to look like. So you can say, well, this is a strong theme that there's this metaphysical thing, or you can say, look, this was being done in the 1940s and 1950s. Right, 56 was the car crash.
Yeah, 56 was the car crash.
So 40s to 50s, when like Hollywood was a huge thing, and this idea of holding women up and obsessing about movie stars for the really, Marilyn Monroe, like you have this idea of like the ideal woman on a two-dimensional screen that guys obsess over, and you'd want to find someone like, oh man, that girl reminds me of Marilyn Monroe. So like, is it an entity, or is it just a theme that is showing up because that's in the zeitgeist at the time, not in some spiritual way, but because society had this issue starting, and this would probably be like the feminist take on it that Dave would be opposed to, but like with this like two-dimensional objectification of women, and then the male desire to have that show up in reality. Like, does that show up because it's a friction in what's going on in society? So of course it shows up over and over again in our stories. Same with car crashes. Like, you know, the car is the symbol of freedom for a while. Like, how many songs in the 50s and 60s, like Last Kiss, Dead Man's Curve, right? Like, the car was like this thing now that pretty much everyone could have, and it became a symbol of like youthful, I finally got my car, I'm free, da da da. And that goes with irresponsible behavior and car crashes, and there's just a theme of car crash at that time that we don't have today, because like everyone's got cars. It's not like, oh, I got my dad's GTO, right? And so yeah, this was like, yes, a lot of these stories have car crashes in them. There was a boatload of songs about it at the time too. So like, which way do you want to come from it? Do you want to come top down, that there's some big metaphysical like chess game like Dave's thinking that's coming from the top down, or do you want to see it as, like, personally I tend to see patterns from the bottom up, right? So there is a strong pattern that shows up in these stories, but I think it's emerging out of like just the chaos of reality, and then patterns start to form rather than top down. A pattern is being imposed upon reality. But I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's the same thing. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that'd be, you know, the fractal of, you know, okay, we're just going to randomly draw lines, and eventually you have this huge fractal Mandelbrot's creation. You know, or is it, I'm going to create a really intricate pattern, and, you know, I mean, that's way too metaphysical for me. I just run a simple little blog about a cartoon artwork.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I have to deal with.
Right.
If we find a publisher and I finish the book, I saw all of this stuff in there, and then I have to present it in a way of like making it clear, or maybe just now that it's on the record, like I have to take Dave's premise at face value. I can't just like tweak the book, but I also have to have my own, like, look, I don't particularly think that there's entities up there. When you're working with Dave, you do have experiences where you're like I like at moments felt like, okay, oh my God, like I've been being chased by this entity my whole life, you know, or like I've been like, here's another weird one that will definitely be, I've probably given away too much, but I don't care. I mean, unless we get if we don't get a publisher, no one will ever see this stuff anyways. But so I'm reading, I bought and read like all of the Alex Raymond, Rick Kirby, all of Leonard Starr's Mary Perkins on Stage, because I don't know where Dave was going with that, but the book suggests that that's important later on, that he thinks Leonard Starr was involved in this somehow. And then as much of the Heart of Juliet Jones as Classic Comics Press has printed. So I'm reading Heart of Juliet Jones, and one of the strips, there's a character named Carson, and I was like, oh yeah, cool, you know. And then I looked at it, and it's Carson G. His last name is G, and the G is Gordon. So you've got like Flash Gordon, you know, and my last name is Grubaugh, so it's also a G. So you have a Carson G in the story. And I was like, whoa, you know, like you want to create a spooky story, like there's another good, like that makes a good story, right? And I sent it to Eddie, and he goes, look at the date on that strip. And I, what do you mean? He said, well, it was September 6th. It was basically a year to the day before the crash. that character he's been named Mr. Gordon a few times, but the first time they say his first name is in Heart of Juliet Jones, a year to the day before the crash. It's published on September 6th, 55 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's stuff like that where you're like, you know, like, oh my God, like I've been a part of this since like well before I was born. But
You ever Google your name just for fun?
I'm the only one for sure.
No, I Googled Matt Dow because I know there's a couple other, like there's Matt Dow Smith, who's a comic book artist.
Yeah.
And so one of the first times because it was back when Google was kind of new, and it's, everything's on the internet. So you Google your name, and you find somebody in Texas that's a lawyer with your name, whatever, stuff like that. Well, there's I think came out in 1955. There's a Jimmy Cagney movie called Run for Cover, where he plays a guy who, before the movie starts, had been wronged and chased out of town. And he's out west because it's a Western, and he runs into a guy, and the train's coming by. And the train had just gotten robbed a couple weeks before, so the guy he's with pulls his gun and fires the gun, and they're standing on a hill. And the guys on the train think these are bank robbers, so they throw the payroll off the train. And James Cagney grabs the payroll and comes into town, and the trains come in, and they're going, oh, yeah, we just got robbed again. And James Cagney shows up, and it's, oh, yeah, these are the robbers. And he's like, hey, and they're going to lynch him because he's a bank robber or a train robber. And they managed to settle it, and the sheriff settles it. And he ends up becoming the sheriff. And the movie goes on. But the thing is, James Cagney's character's name is Matthew Dow.
That's awesome.
And so, like, I found this on, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to watch the movie. Well, the movie showed up on Netflix one day. So I watched this. I'm like, I got to watch this movie. And I'm watching. I'm like, this is a really good movie that I never would have watched if it weren't for the fact that I'm the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like, people go, what's your favorite Western? I'm like, Run for Cover. And they're like, what is it? And it's, it's a sort of obscure 1950s movie because that, it's not like it's a John Wayne flick that everybody knows this movie. It's James Cagney. James Cagney's known as a mobster. I don't know any Jimmy Cagney movies that are Westerns. Well, yeah, he did Westerns.
Well, everyone should go Google their name tonight. See what you find.
You're going to find something weird. I mean, the one that gets me is that, like, I Googled myself one time. Like, if I remember, I Googled myself, and then I went on Twitter because I kept finding all these links to me on Twitter, and it wasn't me. It was somebody with my name. And I'm just like, all right. So, like, I started started following guys with my name, and eventually it got to the point where they were like, yeah, no, block this dude. Because I wasn't, like, posting. It just was weird that, you're followed by yourself.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, I mean, I Google my name semi-frequently, but that's like a professional move on my part. I think I'm trying to manage or be aware of what information there is about me. I mean, it doesn't grow very much anymore, but
yeah, it's not like you're Joe Smith, random person out there just Googling to see what you find. You actually, there are going to be lots of references to you specifically, not just some random Carson.
Yeah, and I find out like, oh, some site is now posting like what shows my art's been in or something like that. I mean, I have a Google alert set up with my name too, but it doesn't catch everything. So I just like, yeah, it's a weird thing about modern society, especially when you teach. So you're kind of a public figure in a sense that has a responsibility to manage your reputation. And then just as an artist where you are putting stuff out in the world, like it seems like a prudent idea to curate your online image. It's like one of the reasons I got off Facebook. So yeah, but I'm never going to find anything that's not actually me, because I don't think there's, as far as I know, ever been another Carson Grubaugh. It's a rare enough first name still, and then a totally bizarre last name. So I've never encountered another person that has.
You're going to Google it tonight, find some genealogy site where there was a Carson Grubaugh in 1842, and he's of record. And, there's still a town out east that curses your name.
Hey, if someone finds that, I'd love to know it, because I've never, like I said, I've Googled my name a fair amount of times. And I've never seen anything. I mean, it's kind of lucky. It's kind of nice to have a name like that, but that did make it weird when it showed up, you know, like in something else. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everyone's done it.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there's, you know, a year to the day Carson G shows up, and you know that Dave saw it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know. He never talked to me about that. I just assumed when I contacted him, because he's so into the names, that Carson would immediately ding 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 ding, right? Like the son of the car. Like it just seemed.
You saw the thing from Eddie last year when Eddie went to visit Dave and tour the White House and lived there for a week, where they went out to dinner and on their way home they found a 1958 Corvette.
Yeah. I mean that's what I'm saying. When you start working with Dave, you get stuff like that. But you know, it could be just because he talks about it so much, he makes you pay attention.
Well, and that's, I mean, I think part of it is Dave just pays attention to everything. I mean,
yeah, he's a master.
Part of it is that Dave has refined his focus to the point where he's going to see things you're not going to see. Like, we were at, there was a gallery show at the Norman Rockwell Museum in Massachusetts, Stockbridge, Massachusetts, of comic book art. They had a couple original pages from The Spirit. They had somebody from Sandman. Terry Moore was in it. Dave was in the show. They had the covers to Church and State 1 and a couple other things. And he's part of this gallery show. And so he's invited to the opening of the show. And, you know, of course, this is back in the Yahoo days. And it was, oh, hey, I'm going to be in Massachusetts. So, okay. You know, so my wife and I drove to Massachusetts. And a bunch of, like, Margaret was there. A bunch of the Yahoos. But at one point, you know, the show, the museum is open. The show is open, but it's not just comic book art. There's also Norman Rockwell paintings because it's the Norman Rockwell Museum. And so I ended up taking the tour that the tour guide gives, where they walk through and they talk about the portraits. Like there's some of the four Freedoms portraits are in one room, and they're talking about the various things about these various paintings. And Shuffleton's Barbershop. It was a Saturday Evening Post cover. It's a barbershop closed at night, and in the back room is the barber and his friends playing in a four-piece band.
Yeah, that's a great painting.
In the foreground of the barbershop there's a window, and there's a crack in the window. So we're looking, we're looking at the painting, listening to the tour guide. The tour ends, and Dave calls, is pointing out that the crack in the window is just one brush stroke. It's not like Rockwell went over a couple times. Yeah. And then Dave points out to the tour guide, because she says that Rockwell had such an eye for detail. There's magazine covers on a magazine rack in the lower corner of the painting. Mm-hmm. And Dave points out they're not all magazines. The bottom three are comic books. And the woman's like, what? And we're like, yeah, it's comic books. One of them is a Walt Disney comic with Donald Duck, Huey, Dewey, and Louie on the cover, and it's painted Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and Donald. Rockwell painted them. The other two covers, there's four covers. One of them we couldn't identify. The other two covers, one of them is Crime Does Not Pay.
Yeah, that's in Strange Death.
And Gabby Haynes Western. So we're looking at these covers, and obviously you look at the cover, and it's the cover, but the logo is not there. It's changed. Well, I started looking, and it's the Crime Does Not Pay cover. It's mostly yellow for the image, but it's a red for the logo with white lettering. And I'm looking. The cover is Crime Does Not Pay. The crime has been changed. I looked. The C has been painted over with a different color red. And the R has been painted so it looks like an H, but it's been touched up with a different color red. And I pointed out to Dave, and he's, oh, wow, that's neat. Well, security comes over because we're getting way too close to an original Norman Rockwell painting.
Yeah, they hate.
Like, what's
security
going on?
Hates when an artist looks at a painting, because artists look at paintings more closely.
Like,
then I get that all the time.
Dave and I are literally 3 inches from this painting looking at it, and
Good.
along with a couple other guys. And they're like, what's going on? And we point out this painting's been touched up, that it originally had the original Crime Does Not Pay logo on it. And they're like, what? The president of the museum comes over and they explain to her what's going on. And she comes and she looks at Dave and she looks at me and she looks at the couple other guys who are there and she went, no one's ever seen this before. And we're like, well, yeah, I mean, it's obvious that this was a white C that somebody put red over. And the red doesn't match, which means it was the paste up department at the Saturday Evening Post got the cover and went, we can't use real logos, paint it up. Yeah. So then we look closer at the Walt Disney cover. The logo for that was on there, and they just painted it a greenish bluish smudge that matched the background so that it wouldn't say Walt Disney.
Oh God!
And the president is getting our names. They're writing everything down. They're going to be making a note about this particular painting that these guys found it. And I kind of looked at Dave like only Dave would show up at get invited to an art gallery, look at a painting, and go, "That's a comic book." And not only was it a comic book, it was 3 actual comic books. We found the covers and the dates.
Do you know which Crime Does Not Pay issue it was?
I'd have to look.
I know. I'd be interested because I'm pretty sure Crime Does Not Pay is in Strange Death of Alex Raymond. It would be interesting if that was one of the issues.
I will later on. I will go and find the email and I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, let me know. So that's a good thing for people to understand, though, is I know, and trust me, I've dealt with it personally plenty. This idea of like Dave is crazy, right? How many people can say that their perception of the world is taking in as much information as that, right? Like that he is the guy that notices that kind of stuff. And I, as a drawing instructor, that is my job, is to get, and I teach basic drawing at community colleges. I'm not teaching it to like art students. So it is my job to open people's, and when I say their eyes, I mean the interaction between their eyes and their brain, what actually gets turned into conscious information that you're aware of. And I know how little people see, and I know how little information people actually take in. That's what I tell my students on day 1. This is a class not about how to move your hand around. Like everyone already knows how to do that. There's a couple of things I can teach you about how to do that. I'm here to teach you how to extract information from reality that you have not seen before. And so I have firsthand experience with how little most people are intaking. I know that I intake, I mean, when I'm going around day-to-day life, I'm not always in visual artist mode, and I miss a lot as well. But Dave has leveled up to a point where he's intaking massive amounts of information at all times, right? So he's like, in that Norman Rockwell example, you have someone who really knows how to look. Now, it did trigger, he's also has a very specific interest, like anything to do with comic books, you know, right. It's always going to be put through, that's his interface that all of the information filters through. So of course he noticed that part, but the amount of information that he takes in, it's hard for me to say that someone's crazy when they're just receiving things that the rest of us aren't receiving. And I don't mean he's receiving messages from entities or stuff.
He's seen at 5 when everybody else is looking at 2. You know,
look, reality is noise, and it's our job as an animal to make signal out of the noise, and he's pulling a far more signal out of the noise than most people. The other thing is, he dropped out of high school. He managed to make it that, like, he has always been his own boss, and no one's ever been able to tell him no about anything. And like, so there's never been a check on like his beliefs. So you have a master signal finder, and then there's never been any process that's ever checked how he creates the signals out of the noise. Like, that's just what you're gonna wind up with. And how many other people in any realm of art or science or anything can you think that are as good as Dave is in his chosen realm and had zero checks on them ever? Like, how many other historical figures can you say had that? And so, like, that's, I think, just what you wind up with. And like, I mean, if you think it's crazy, then like, just learn to have checks and balances around yourself.
Right.
You know, everyone wants to diagnose him or something like that. And it's like, you're not, it's like when we're talking about reproducing these things as well, or, you know, we talked about, me and Sean and Dave have talked about reproduction on the Cerebus cover book, that he wasn't too happy with the reproduction on. And anyone else looks at that book and goes, it's great. What are you talking about? Well, like Dave and myself and Sean have trained our eyes to see at a level of resolution that most people don't see at. So like, I've got these wonderful books, these Sergio Topi books that are coming out now, the collected Topi. And they're beautiful. They're like these beautiful reproductions of Sergio Topi. I don't know if you know him, but he's a just absolutely masterful comic artist from, was he Spanish, Italian? Must be Italian. Topi must be Italian. So they're these beautiful books and great ink reproduction. But when I look at it, I still see some pixels. I'm sure no one else has ever looked, and I'm not knocking these books at all. They're beautiful books. Like, everyone should go buy them. But like, I don't know if people like have seen my paintings. They're like obsessively like forehair brushed, small attention to detail. And that's an ability. I tell my students, it's like cardiovascular health. Attention is the same thing. You have to train your attention. And if you don't, you know, you get real tired of looking really quickly until you train it. So like me and Dave and Sean and other people, there's a painter, Anthony Wachulis, that painting of I know you can't see it back there, but this one I bought from him. Look him up, Anthony Wachulis. He is the greatest realist, trompe-l'oeil, fool the eye realist that's ever done it, in my opinion. Look him up on Instagram, Wachulis. That guy has trained his visual acuity to an just absolutely, in the history of mankind, unheard of level. Okay, his ability to see like microscopic nuance is insane, absolutely insane. And we were just running into that wall when we're talking to publishers of like, well, why are you going to pay all this extra money? Like, it looks the same. And it's like, no, it doesn't. This print, like what Sean accomplishes with Marquee, I think that's how they're pronouncing it, Marquee Press, is significantly better. It's just, yes, no one else can see it but us. And so I get why you wouldn't want to pay more money, because no one else can see it. But you've got to trust the guys who have spent their entire life honing that ability. It is like cardiovascular ability. Attention is like and the ability to see. I mean, some of it's physical. Like, if you have really sharp eyes, you got sharp eyes, but your ability to know what to look for. And so, you know, Dave has honed a specific, I don't know that it's a healthy ability that he's honed, but I'm not sure I buy that it's crazy either. It's just he's spent so much time knowing how to look at comics. Well, and he sees things that one other person in the world is going to see, if that, and understand why he saw it.
Well, that's going back to Sean for a second. I had the remastered of Volume 1, and I have my old copy of Volume 1. And there was a page where you hold them next to each other, and you can tell that Sean put in time and money. This wasn't we're just going to slap the ink on the paper and ship it. It's going to get printed right. And I tried putting something on the blog of there is a difference if you have the old copy and you're like, I don't need a new printing, you're going to see things you didn't see. And I had two of the same panel, and on the computer screen they look exactly the same, but if you put them next to each other, you're like, there's detail here you're not going to see in the copy I have. I think it's like a fifth or sixth printing from like the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's one of those, it's like I really wish that I could just shove the new remastered in someone's face going, you haven't read Cerebus if you haven't read this book.
And you can't see it on the computer screen. And that's why I'm so like, these books, we can't just release them digitally. Like, like people are just like, well, just put it all digitally. Like it's, I get that most, like, we're getting a lot of, on the campaign right now, a lot of people want the Heritage Auctions in a physical copy, which is cool. I didn't think anyone would care about that. And to me, that book isn't as important, like the little, nuance of how it prints.
How big would we have to get printed at?
Oh no, I'm in the process of moving. I have that. I was gonna go grab it, but it's taped up in a box.
It's not gonna be like 11 by 17 or anything huge. It's gonna be like 8 by
10-ish. Yeah, it's bigger than a comic book.
Well, I mean, if people really want it, then if You Don't Know Jack does really well and you guys make a lot of money, maybe you'll do a second Kickstarter for that one, right?
No, I'm talking to Sean about setting up a print on demand.
Okay.
I'd asked Alfonso at Studio Comics Press if he wanted to do it because he's been doing them, but I haven't heard back from him. I mean, maybe he's just busy. But the other thing is they're in Canada, and
you got to pay shipping to the States or shipping.
Yeah. So we're thinking about an Amazon Prime. So hopefully before the campaign's over, we can say for sure. But a print on demand version instead of a Kickstarter, because I don't want to deal with you change the size and it changes all the shipping, and but for people who want it, we will eventually get a print on demand version of it. But the point is to me, that one is okay to see it on a screen. Like, I don't care about the loss of quality. It looks fine on a screen. But You Don't Know Jack and Strange Death of Alex Raymond have to be seen in print, because it's that thing of, you put the two examples on screen and it's like, I don't see the difference, but you see it in person and it's a difference. They have to be in print. They've got to be done by Sean and hopefully by Marquis, because he knows how to work with them to get the results. I'm really glad to hear that the fundraiser edition that Eddie's making is being printed at Marquis. And so when people are buying from the campaign and they're getting those fundraiser editions as an add-on, if you already bought it, you're getting it from Eddie. If you haven't bought it and you're getting it from us, it's just extras that Eddie had. But it's going to have that level of printing that we want. It's not just run off of like a digital printer.
Right.
The prototype I have was run off of I think Alfonso did it at Studio Comics Press, and it's run off of a digital printer. And those they look fine. They look really good to everyone but me and Sean and Dave. They would not see a difference. But I know what Sean and Marquis can do, and personally, selfishly, I just want the book looking like that. I don't care if other people can see the difference or not. I can see the difference. I put a lot of work into it. I need to see it that way. And so hopefully we'll find a publisher, and hopefully the publisher will be willing to go with us on that. If not, I won't put up a huge fight about it, but I would hope that we could just say, I don't know, whatever, take it out of my percentage. Like, if it costs more to do it that way, then I'll take less money or whatever.
I would say, if you guys end up having to Kickstarter it, I would factor in getting it printed good in the best, best and bells and whistles copy, and then it's going to cost a little more. And if people want to buy it, yeah, you know what you're getting. You're going to have to pay a little bit more because we're going to make sure this is the book that looks good.
Yeah, if we kickstart it, if I don't find a publisher, if we kickstart it, what will happen is we'll go through Marquee. It will be the 270, I think, some odd pages, or no, 250 some odd pages that are already drawn. And then I have 21 pages of volume 3 in like scan, where Dave cut and pasted and scanned them. And that's what I would release. If we do a Kickstarter, I don't think that I'm going to finish the book. I don't think I'm going to put my ending on it, because I think it will be a more limited audience of people who just want a document of what Dave did, right?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's fans out there that want all 5 volumes, and we can want in one hand and crap in the other and see which fills up first. I mean, if Dave's not going to finish it, it's not going to get finished. It's going to go on the pile of things he started that just didn't get to completion.
And so there's people out there who want that document of where he got to. And that's what the Kickstarter version would be, is this is where Dave got to. But I don't know that if we Kickstart it, it's really worth my time and effort, because there's the 21 pages of volume 3 that I would have to illustrate. And there's the, then I would have to write my ending to it to make it like a concluded reading experience, so it doesn't just it's like, and that's it. So I think I can probably finish the reading experience in about 20 pages. I'm not going to sit down and do that until it's worth my time, but I don't think that extra 40 to 50 pages of drawing is something I can afford my time on if we're doing a Kickstarter. If we have a publisher, even if I'm not making money off of it,
the audience is, it's going to get to a wider audience.
The expanded audience is worth my time. And for it to be published, like, I don't think any publisher in their right mind is going to go like, yeah, we'll publish 250 pages and 20 pages of like cut up photocopies and with no ending. Like, I wouldn't blame any publisher for going, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time promoting that book. But I can finish the book as a reading experience, like, that has a readable conclusion that is like, okay, this is where Dave went too far. And like I said, that image is set up on the last page he did, which is fantastic. I know exactly how to transition from here's where Dave went too far down the rabbit hole. I got left with this, given his premise, this is what I saw happened. And I think I can wrap that up in 20 to 30 pages. So
you hope you might fall down a rabbit hole and 800 pages later.
I mean, like, the material can go that way, but yeah, I mean, you could research that out the gate, but I in my head, I know, like, here's the couple topics I want to cover, and I'm not looking at anything past that, right? I'm putting up the rabbit hole barrier. I'm building the chicken wire.
You're going to do this trick with a net.
Yeah, I'm going to do the chicken wire fence around myself. I'm at, like, we'll call up President Trump and build his shoddy wall around me. And, like,
I mean, that's
probably less security than the chicken wire fence.
that's the one thing about, I understand Dave going down the rabbit hole, because I've asked him over the years. I'd sent faxes back and forth, and I would say, how deep are you going? And he's like, there really is no bottom to this. 'Cause, like, I may have mentioned this in a please hold, but in fact, yeah, I did when I was talking to Eddie. I ran across a copy of Scarlet, the official sequel to Gone with the Wind, at a rummage sale for like $1. And so I bought it, and it was half off, so it was 50 cents. So I buy this book for 50 cents, and I'm going to send it to Dave. Well, when I open it up, and it's a first printing, I think it might have been signed by the author, had a book plate or something. And I contacted him first because it doesn't pay to mail a book to Canada that he doesn't need or whatever. And he's like, oh, no, send it up, we're not going to say no to research. And I think that may have been his downfall, was that he should have been saying, yeah, no, we need to, don't send it, Matt.
Well, and I mean, I love Eddie, but Eddie is just too damn good at this, at finding this stuff, and then like it's just this. I can't even imagine. I mean, I did that drawing of Eddie that I think is going to be in with all his books piled on it. I did a drawing of Eddie with all his books. I'll try and wrap that into if I do a published version of it as well. But yeah, I mean, it's absurd, the piles. And like you said, Dave will take 3 strips and like 3 panels of a loosely tangentially related photorealist strip, and it becomes 12 pages of biblical exegesis. It's like I'd get that as like people think Alan Moore scripts are bad. I mean, I've never gotten an Alan Moore script, but you'll get like Dave's trying to, he gives me the mock-ups, which is great because it's a visual representation of just like, go draw that. But then the notes that come with it can be like,
my favorite Alan Moore story, I forget which artist it was. It might have been Addie Campbell, got a From Hell script in, and he handed it to his wife and gave her a highlighter and said, highlight the panel descriptions. It was, I think there was three single space typed pages, and that was just describing panel 1.
Yeah, but I mean, those, like, I don't know, I haven't seen those scripts, but you've seen Dave's commentary on the.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Dave, the fact that there was, I think it's a Heart of Julia Jones where there's somebody named Jeff Smith. So then Dave had to stop and reread all of Bone.
Yeah, that. So you
the one that got me about it is then Dave went and he's saying that he's got the original self-published stuff Jeff Smith did, the Image stuff, and then I think there's a third version, and there's actual changes in the book between the versions. So then Dave's going through making a catalog of what issues he owns from what version, and these are the ones he's missing. And I'm going, okay, next time I go to the comic book store, I'll start looking for back issues of Bone. And I'm thinking, this is insane. Why does he need 3 copies of the same book?
Yeah, so that's like kind of, what a script for a page of Strange Death could be like too, is he's trying to explain all of the resonances he's seen to me so I can like imbue that into the drawing, and it's, some of it's just like, yeah, I mean, I'm mentally skimming with the highlighter and going, okay, that's, where it catches my attention. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why he wasn't happy with some of the stuff. I thought that the stuff I did in volume 2 was way better than what I did in volume 1. I thought it was more Al Williamson-y, so that was weird to hear that.
Well, when he said that, I'm like, okay. I'm like, having not seen the pages, I couldn't make a judgment. But I'm going, I mean, Dave doesn't think you're a Al Williams guy. Okay, so, what is Dave going to do? He's either got to get somebody else or he's got to work with what he's got. And I understand that, this was the one where Dave said it's going to be perfect. And, that's where I go, okay, Dave, you only have X number of lines left in the hand. How much could Dave draw? How many pages could Dave do as this is what I want, Carson?
Well, and it's a weird challenge because, like Dave's art still looks like it looks like Dave doing Al Williamson. It doesn't look like Al Williamson, right? And right. and the level of detail and how tiny the lines and stuff that Dave is trying to put in. Like I got the big Star Wars Al Williamson, as part of the research IDW. they just sent me that. It's like $150 book. And, you know, at the time, Ted Adams was still there. And so we're like, hey, Ted, can we get Carson again? Yeah, to send me. So it's huge. It's his art's way bigger than the 11x17 that we draw on now. It's way bigger. And I wasn't seeing any ridiculously small lines or detail. It's pretty, I mean, that's one of the things that's really great about him is the same thing Dave's talking about Raymond. There's these moments where it just looks like, you know, he went crazy, and there's these big brush strokes and there's not really much detail, but it looks like detail. And then you look at Dave's artwork and it's like, I mean, ridiculously little detailed. And so when I started working on it with the initial Jack sequences, I was taking Dave's idea of like, get ridiculously small lines, and I was being competitive, like, can I make smaller lines than Dave? And you know, like, why not? And like comparing, I think I did a Moment of Cerebus post a long time ago where I compared them. I think I got down to like a quarter of the size of what Dave was doing. And apparently that's the stuff that he really liked. This like super densely packed stuff that I was doing with the Jack sequence. I think too, like Jack just looks right for that. You know, she's got dark hair and she's not got fair skin, but in the drawings you've got, you leave the skin white, you know, like, so she has that really like striking combo in drawings that, and the dark background of the shop, I think it just had the contrast to it. So when I went into volume 2, I was actually trying to spread my lines out a little bit more, not go as small, not go as dense, to try and match like the spacing of the cross hatching that Dave does. And then looking at the Al Williams stuff, I was trying to move it more towards his stuff. And I mean, maybe it just wasn't as densely packed with the detail. I mean, it's still ridiculously detailed. You know, I run the risk of I've got problems with my elbow and wrist now too. and I mean, Dave's not going to listen to this, but he says there's some little chip of something that he feels moving around. But in my experience working on the Strange Death of Alex Raymond, and don't get me wrong, when I paint, it's like, do I have, no, I packed all my stuff up. When I paint, it's super detailed too. So I've been doing damage to my wrist plenty, but what it is the ulnar nerve comes out. I think it's the C4 or C5 vertebrae. The ulnar nerve comes out and runs through here, down in the clavicle, through the shoulder, and then down through the elbow. So you get like tennis elbow pain. It's called cubital tunnel syndrome, not carpal tunnel. So it comes right here and it hurts. And then it runs right down to where Dave always points on his wrist, right here. That's the ulnar nerve. And it hurts right there. And it's from cross hatching, then it comes up and you'll get like when I'm done drawing, I can't, like my hand goes, I can't open it more than that for a while. And I have to, like, I can't do that after a day of doing Strange Death stuff. Because at least for me, when I cross hatch, it's kind of like playing drums. I used to play drums too. There's a whip motion of the pinky that when you cross hatch fast, it's like playing drums. You have this motion that you're doing with your pinky, and that initiates the twist of the wrist. And so that turns into like a claw, and you can't unstretch it. And that causes the ulnar nerve damage. And so I wonder if that's just not what happened with his wrist.
It's entirely possible. I mean, my wife's got carpal tunnel and her ulnar nerve because she's a nurse, so she's constantly taking notes and stuff.
Yeah.
She's going to go in and get the surgery for the carpal tunnel, and they're hoping that'll help the ulnar nerve stuff too. And I'm going, How do you screw both nerves in your hand?
It's, yeah, I mean, it's no fun. And like, I just went like that right now. I don't know if it recorded it, but like, I got a really big pop out of it. There's like, when I was doing Strange Death, there was exercise. I was doing ulnar nerve glides. And I'll definitely do them if I go back to that material. But there was, yeah, I don't know. I thought that was an interesting comment. And he never told me, like, he didn't even look at the artwork until well after I was done with it. And what he was saying about me talking about Al Williamson, what I had done is I had just, I had asked him why he had held Al Williamson up as the best of those guys. Because if I'm supposed to be mimicking Al Williamson, I wanted to know what Dave was seeing in it. And I guess he just was like, well, if you don't just see it automatically, then you're not the guy to be recreating Al Williamson. And I had told him, I said, look, the thing that I like about Al Williamson, that I really love about his work, is he seems to take a lot more risks in that he's a little looser and I don't want to say sloppier, but I don't know. There's just like a looseness to it. And so when he succeeds, you're watching like this high wire act and it's like, wow, he pulled it off and it's amazing, right? But in that, my opinion is that sometimes he falls off the wire, or there's days where he took way more breaks than the other guys, looking at the Star Wars stuff and looking at the Secret Agent X9 stuff. Like, he had more fill-ins than the other guys. So it just looked to me like he was less focused. So I was asking Dave about that. And Al Williamson, and I thought this was what Dave was doing with the Glamourpuss covers. A lot of the times when he draws women that look like they have like they're cross-eyed or they have lazy eyes. Like if he draws women looking to the side, like the one eye, it's like really, I just noticed it over and over and over again. And I had asked Dave, I said, I see now why you always did the cross-eyed on the Glamourpuss covers, right? The models were always like cross-eyed. And I thought he was like, had picked up on this thing that in Al Williamson's art where the women always look like they're cross-eyed a little bit, or they look lazy-eyed. And I don't know if that's what he was doing or not. He just seemed to take that as like, well, you don't like Al Williamson. I think he had said that I don't know. He had said something. I think he was saying it. He had seen that Al Williamson, he had seen photographs where it looked like he had that himself or his wife had that or something. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what what he said, but to me it was like this thing I noticed over and over. And then I had said the reason I'd said in Alex Raymond, I see he's still spontaneous, but it's like in this very controlled way. It's more like calligraphy. And we had talked about that a lot. I was pretty convinced that this school of artists, that there must be some exercise they did to learn certain brush shapes, like ways that you move the brush to get certain shapes. And Dave talks about that a little bit in Strange Death when he's talking about how Alex Raymond gets the fine lines with the brush. But I see in all of those, there's like a vocabulary of shapes that they make. And the drawings are almost entirely constructed out of like 20 different types of brush strokes. Whereas like modern comic artists, it's like they're drawing, like they're taking the pen and they're like drawing everything in. Those old strip guys, there's a series of shapes and they combine the shapes in a way that makes the images. So to me, Raymond is more, he's easier to re-ink because you can recreate those shapes. Williamson is in between Raymond and Stan Drake in that there's still the shapes there, but you can see that they go on a little bit more ruggedly, and it's hard to recreate some of that ruggedness, and be accurate. Like, it's really easy for me to not draw like Raymond, but it's easier to ink one of those, or it's easier for me to like mimic someone, say like Brian Boland or some really tight artist. It's way easier to recreate that. But you try and mimic a guy like John Romita Jr. and it's that guy draws so damn fast. Like, how are you ever supposed to like to
Right.
mimic his style and his particular way of drawing faces and stuff? It doesn't happen naturally for me, so I'd have to like slow down and like, okay, how would JR draw a nose? Like, I've tried to do this before and it came out abysmal. But then I did a book right before I started working with Dave just for myself called Batman What the Fuck, WTF, and it was a parody of Grant Morrison's Batman RIP. And I did each page in the style of a different artist. So someone like Chris Ware is super easy to mimic because he's so rigid, right? He's like letter forms. Brian Boland is really easy to mimic. Brian Hitch is easy to mimic for me. But John Romita Jr., that page was abysmal. It looked nothing like a JR. Or Tim Sale. Tim Sale is another person that he's got such a particularly weird way of doing his figures, but then his actual lines are so spontaneous. So that spontaneous stuff is really hard to recreate because it's not what your body does naturally on the fly. And if you like, so I can't, so Al Williamson is a little bit harder for me to re-ink because there's just some chaos in there, like the dry brush. You can't guarantee that your dry brush is going to do the same thing that his dry brush did. And then Stan Drake, the reason that I was saying I really like Stan Drake is his stuff is just like it's just nuts. And Dave's talked about someone seeing him ink and it. I guess he inked at a distance like Zorro. That's what I got from what Dave described, and I can't imagine doing that. But his lines are so, you can tell he just goes boom 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 like so quick, and so it's like almost impossible even to trace over that stuff because it's so spontaneous that if you're as spontaneous as he was, you're not actually recreating the drawing, you're doing like a kind of version of it. But if you slow down to be accurate with where all the lines are at, it kills all the spontaneity of a Stan Drake drawing. And Stan Drake, I think, walked that tightrope and had less, he fell off less than Al Williamson. And so I was asking Dave, like, what are the qualities in Al Williamson that you love so much that we're trying to put in the book? I wasn't saying I don't want to draw like Al Williamson. I was just describing, here are the factors that I see.
I'm wondering how much, where these guys train, what kind of training they had, how they learned. Because you said, there's, the old strip guys have like 20 shapes. So I'm assuming that's like a pencil thing where in the penciling, you got to draw a girl. She's in this position. This is the shape you draw. And then when you're inking, you bring it all together, right?
No, it's an inking thing, like shapes that you can make with a Winsor Newton Series 7 number 2.
Okay.
And I actually made for myself, this is something me and Dave talked about a lot, and most of these guys did not have a lot of formal training. There seemed to be one guy that they worked with in, there seemed to be one guy that they all worked with in New York. I can't think of his name right now, but none of them did it for very long. So my assumption is that if there was something like this, it was something that they were picking up while they were, I don't have this stuff on my computer. Let me see. Okay. I'm going to find something here and I'll screen share it. My assumption is if I'm right, and I could totally be wrong, if I'm right that there was like it's like learning your ABCs, right? Like when you're in school and you learn how to make those forms. And at first it's really difficult, right? Like you really have to concentrate each time. And then over time you build up, and this is a term I learned from the Anthony Wachulis guy, because he's a fantastic educator as well. The idea is is practice takes, you do things consciously and it's difficult at first. And then it's not even muscle memory, it's a mental thing, and you build what's called automaticity. And then things happen automatically. And so you take low level information like, how do I move my hand in this direction? Like, that's a very simple task, right? And you train it enough to where it just becomes automatic. And then when you're drawing, you can focus on higher level information like, okay, there's an eyebrow. And then your system just does the right of the 26 moves to make an eyebrow. So you make the right like shape to make the eyebrow. And so I think there must have been, just in the studio system that they had where they're all apprenticing for each other, there were exercises, or just through like, maybe it wasn't so formalized, but just through like working on each other's work and showing each other stuff, they just developed. But there's a very common vocabulary of these shapes, especially in the guys. Well, I don't know, it's all over the place in all of the artwork from that time. You don't see it as much in Stan Drake because, as far as I can tell, he was just he was just a wild man. But it's still there. Okay, here, I can screen share. So what I did, trying to get better for this book, is that showing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so what I did is I went through the scans from Heritage Auction of Alex Raymond's original work. And this is definitely not what these guys were doing, but this was the idea I had about the kind of things they might have been doing to build this vocabulary. And you'll see it in their signatures too. Like, they construct their signatures out of these motions and these shapes. Like a shape that starts with a thin point and ends with a very like perfect wedge like that. Raymond didn't go trace that out and get a perfect and go back. He just like started here and went there and was done with it, right? And so if you look at the old signatures, they're constructed out of all this as well. So what I did is I went and I copied lines that I thought were indicative of basic shapes in the vocabulary that I was seeing. Okay. Like this thin to thick, and I made these sheets for myself that I would then practice on. So print these out and then get comfortable doing them in every direction. So start out and move in every direction without spinning the paper, or start in and move out in every direction without spinning the paper. If you spin the paper, then you're not seeing the drawing as a viewer would see it. A lot of people spin the paper. And I used to do that all the time. And you'll see in these videos I'm doing in the campaign, these sketches I'm doing for people, I really only spin the paper if I'm doing the cross hatching to get my hand in a more comfortable position. But I'm trying to keep the image fairly flat. So, and I just built up more and more difficult ones. So here you see a basic like Raymond kind of cloud form. And he has, this is all one line where it kind of loops. And like, how in the world do you do that with the brush? I don't know. That's still difficult for me. And so to practice this, going in all directions, just thin to thick, starting at thick and going thin. And then I increase the complexity. So here you have ones that are like capped off on one side and end thin on the other side. So at first, when I'm tracing over these things, I really have to think, okay, I've got to turn the brush like upside down, or like how do I really got to figure out how to create that in one brush stroke, like not outlining and filling it in, but do it in one brush stroke all at once. Yeah. And so I like how, like you can tell which direction their hand went based on what angle it's capped at the end here. You know, this one's capped on the left. So that means that he started with it to the left and then probably dragged it right, because it doesn't make any sense for that to end up that way. Here's these little rectangles that are really important. That's probably a pen mark. This is two strokes put together. So one stroke there and one stroke there. And so you just start to break down like how these were manufactured as one stroke, or in this case, a series of strokes, I would imagine. And then you get these more complicated ones where it looks to me like they're still doing it all as one gesture. Or these little triangles that you get, the leaf shapes that you get, the loops that they get. So I was trying to, here's a typical Alex Raymond leaf shape. And I think that's 2 strokes that he uses to get that. Some of the strokes you get like in the hair or the more wild brush strokes, flowers. That's a pretty standard little grass. And so I made the, and then here's, this is a Stan Drake hair, I think, Juliet Jones hair, which, you know, Dave talks about a lot as like this height of inking, which it really truly is. So I made those test sheets for myself, and I'd print them out. And I mean, I did absolute garbage job of it, but but my assumption is that there might have been something like that where they went through this standard series of, okay, if you hold your brush straight up and down and do it versus hold it this way and do it. I don't know. It looks to me like a lot of that.
Now you got me wondering what their penmanship looked like. Like, you know, handwritten letters that they had sent to people. If we get examples of that to see if they had really nice calligraphy style penmanship or if it was just scribbles.
It's probably awful. Like, my handwriting's terrible. And it's really funny. The first time I got, I think it was a check from Dave to pay me back for some materials that I had bought, you know, with the envelope with like handwritten, it's just handwriting. You know, we hold him in this regard as like this amazing letterer. And so you expect, like, it doesn't look anything like his lettering. You know, he has, like, when he letters, it's Dave's.
When Margaret posts the notebook pages, you know, 90% of the time I look at it and I'm like, I really need this translated into English because this is just chicken scratch. Because it's a note. You know, if it's not for reproduction and it's not even proto lettering, yeah, no, Dave's handwriting is atrocious. But I'm just kind of wondering because I work with a guy whose dad, I guess, had really nice calligraphy, was into calligraphy, and taught him. And so, like, we fill out paperwork at work, and it's chicken scratch. Everybody, it's chicken scratch. But this one guy, it looks like professional printing because he takes the time to actually letter when he writes. And I'm just kind of wondering if you know, if it was maybe the public school system teaching kids handwriting, you know, is how Drake and Raymond and those guys picked up on, you know, this is how you need to hold the brush.
I doubt it. Dave, I'm sure, like, these universities archives, you could easily get hold of their letters and see what their handwriting was like. I don't know. It's very particular to this brush. How do you hold this brush? How do you angle your hand? How do you come? It's very particular to the tool and the paper.
Well, I'm also sure that a lot of it is they knew their brushes, you know, like I know Dave for the longest time, he had a number of brushes, and the one brush would be good for these kind of lines, but not for that kind of line. And, you know, and like he when he was getting he ran out of brushes and they weren't making them anymore. He couldn't get them. And so he was hoarding them and having people send them to him, and they'd show up, and immediately he would just do test inking to see what kind of line he could get off the brush.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sure it's a case that Raymond and Drake and Williamson and all those guys, you know, they knew their tools.
Yeah, but I'm skeptical that they were sitting there swapping out tools like that because they were on such a tight deadline. As I think the brushes were just made better.
Well,
like from when I started working on Strange Death of Alex Raymond, and I bought some Winsor Newton Series 7 number 2. Maybe I just got lucky, but that first batch I bought were all good. Since then, we would buy, like, because they don't last very long. I mean, unless you're doing this crazy cleaning regimen that Dave says he's doing, but then you're spending all, like, there's no way those guys were doing that. Unless they were having their assistants do it. That might have been, if the assistants were like, okay, I draw for 20 minutes, give me that brush, go clean this brush. There's no way they were sitting there and doing a full brush cleaning every 15 to 20 minutes. Because what happens is the ink starts to dry up in the brush down here where the bristles meet, and it starts messing with the ability for the brush to hold the shape. And
Right.
so what I have is I keep just a little thing of water here and a water, and then I have inking shirts, and I just go like this. And I just...
I was thinking about it when you were showing me the test pages. I was like, it's kind of got that Bob Ross joy of painting thing where, you know, oh, you just do this. And it's like, Bob, no one on the planet can do that. You know,
but that's what it is, right? Bob Ross constructs his images out of that's why people make fun of Bob Ross, is because there's no, especially a realist like me, there's not much observation. It's all application of it's procedure.
right.
It's procedural. But yeah, like this is the tree stroke. This is the house stroke.
I mean, that's every now and then I'll catch an episode of The Joy of Painting, and I'm like, you know, I'm a shitty artist. I know I am. But it's like, I really would want to try this. And it's like, Bob Ross, you know, it's the joy of paint. Bob Ross said anybody could paint. But at the same time, Bob Ross also, it was so ingrained in him. It's like, okay, you know, quick little this, there's a tree. And everybody, you know, everybody makes fun of him for it. But at the same time, if you do that a couple thousand times, you will be able to go, bam, 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 tree. Bam, 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 mountain.
And that's why most artists, I mean, I like Bob Ross. I think it's good what he did. And I think there's techniques he has that could be used for a better purpose. But I think, especially like as an educator, I mean, good for him for getting the art out there. I'm never going to get crap on Bob Ross. But one of my mottos for myself is principles over procedures. And Bob Ross is 100% procedure, right? Like he doesn't even need to know. He's just, and like he has principles that led to the procedures, and if you reverse engineer, you'll see that he did some impressive stuff that, yeah, is what you're talking about, that learning curve. But you don't have to go through his learning curve. He'll just say, take a fan brush and do that, and it will make leaves, right? And so he's just teaching you a procedure. And if you want a principle out of that, it's up to you to reverse engineer why he came up with that procedure.
Right.
Me personally, I would rather teach people principles and they can develop their, I mean, sometimes that you have to do both, right? You have to teach them, like if I'm trying to teach someone how to ink like Alex Raymond, then I'm going to give them those test sheets, and that's procedural. But the principle behind it is automaticity. It's like learning your letters, and then these things will happen without you thinking about it, because you're paying attention to the visual stimulus that's leading to the image that I'm not thinking about drawing a rectangle. I'm thinking about drawing an eyebrow, and boom, like there was a moment while I was working on, there's that page in Strange Death of Alex Raymond where there's a bunch of little there's like, I don't know, 16 or 20, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of the same face, and I was stupid enough to not just stat it, and I drew it over and over. And there's just
every time I go back and I'm looking at stuff and that post pops up, I just die. I'm like, no one in their right mind would do it that way, but that's the perfect way to do it.
Well, I just wanted pieces that could get more money in an auction. On volume 2, it's all stats, so the page is like a blank page with one picture in it. You know, it's not going to sell for as much. I wanted them to look on the wall, because remember, like most of what I do is fine arts, and so I think about it on a gallery wall, and can I put it in a gallery and add to my resume that way? So that's why I was doing that. But I was talking to someone while I was inking. I had a friend over, and we were just hanging out, and I was talking while I was drawing, and there was one moment where I did one of Jack's eyebrows, and it was like the perfect calligraphic one-shot eyebrow that I didn't need to fix. You know, I didn't need to go back and add a little bit too. And I went, and like the conversation stopped, and I was just like, oh my God. And it was this beautiful moment of like, that's what in your I'm sure Raymond wasn't like that all the time, but my assumptions about those guys is every stroke was like that for them, right? Every stroke was just boom, it's done, move on. It has that perfect calligraphic simplicity. And so I had that moment on that one eyebrow.
Now, the question is, did you have that moment on the next eyebrow?
No, not at all. I got out of the flow, you know. I was in a flow state talking to someone. And so
Right.
all of that automaticity I built up, it was an automatic response to the stimulus, and it worked perfect. And then I recognized it happened. It's like a Zen thing, right? As soon as you recognize that you're in the state, you're out of the state. And then I was out of it and talking about it. No, and then the next eyebrow was like atrocious.
That's, I mean, when I do the please hold sketches, they're not, I mean, they're drawing, but there was the 1 month when Spawn 300 came out. I'm like, I'm going to do a recreation of the cover to Spawn 5 and you know, make a joke out of it. And I, you know, printed it out, traced it, transferred it, the pencils, and I started inking it. And, you know, I know it's going to look horrid, but as long as it looks Todd McFarlane-y horrid and not just me horrid, I'll be fine. And I got done with it. I'm like, I actually really like this one. It looks good. And then I look close. I'm like, yeah, no, I was copying the coloring instead of the actual ink lines. And you know, there's little things that I noticed, but I put it up online and people are like, oh, that's amazing. And I'm like, it's traced. I can't draw like that at all. If you want to give me money to do that, fine, but I'm going to trace.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. It's like I'm talking about with recreating these guys' stuff. Like, it is not easy to trace this stuff and have it carry the same quality. So people that think that tracing is easy, it's like me and Dave tracing off the, you know, like when I'm doing a page of this stuff, he's tracing on tracing paper, I'm tracing in Photoshop, right?
Right.
And in the artist commentary, it shows my process. So it's like, oh, you're cheating, you're tracing. Okay, first off, go watch these straight to ink videos I'm doing for the campaign, right? And then, like, I can do it without tracing. I can do it without, they're not perfect. I'm doing these in like a half hour really quick, but I can do it without a sketch, right? So I can do it. I'm saving time by tracing. Second off, and there's the artist David Hockney, a very famous fine artist, and he has this ridiculous idea that all the old masters were just using camera obscura and just tracing all of their stuff. And there's a documentary out there too called Tim's Vermeer, and this guy who loves Vermeer comes up with this crazy contraption that allows him to, he basically like recreates a Vermeer in front of him in real life and then uses this crazy mirror projection thing to paint a Vermeer. And so there's, I mean, yes, they probably did this stuff, but they could do it without it, I'm sure. And this guy, I'm on a tangent right now, but this guy that recreates this Vermeer, okay, if you've ever seen a Vermeer in person and you know anything about painting, like Vermeer's stuff is famous for being opalescent. It's famous for looking like jewels. That's because he painted through multiple layers and he's controlling how the light interacts with his paint. This guy did it like a paint by number, and it's all one layer and it's flat. So he did a great job for a guy who's never painted before, and he used the system. It's good, but he just has no understanding of like how paint works. And then David Hockney, he has this idea that everyone's like camera obscura, which certainly a number of artists, including Leonardo da Vinci, have described camera obscura rooms, and they were using it as a tool to get a painting started. But David Hockney has a book, and he's trying to prove his thesis, and he has tracings he did using a camera obscura next to tracings by the painter Ong, who did the Grand Odalisque. And he's putting them next to each other like, look, I got the same results as Ong. And it's like, no, even if he was using a camera obscura, he's still a significantly better draftsman than you, because even if you're tracing, we're all going to choose different things to highlight, right? Like I'm not, like me and Dave could trace the same image, and they're going to be two totally different drawings. And even one of my students could trace a drawing, and it's I hate to say it. I mean, I have some really talented students that could probably kick my ass, but most of them are not, even a tracing's not going to look as good as what I do, because me and Dave and people, you know, the more time you've drawn, the more you know what to look for. Um,
And one of my
so
problems with that I had with Glamourpuss is, Dave admitted it that he's studying the art, and he's I mean, at the beginning he was studying his bad foreign language reprintings where you don't even know what fine lines were there, and he's slaving over it, and he's got to get into the mindset of the sooner I get this done, the sooner I can go out and do what I actually want to do: race cars, go golf, whatever Raymond and Drake were doing. And it's like, it goes back to Wally Wood with, never draw what you can trace, never trace what you can swipe,
yeah.
And I think that'll, for you guys, it's going, okay, how did they get the art they got as quickly as possible? And it's one of those, well, either you're really, really good or you're a really, really, really good tracer.
Well, and that's why some of this stuff about, like, Dave would send me instructions on how often I got to clean my brush and da 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 da, and I'm like, there's no way these guys were doing that unless their assistants were doing that because they wanted to go get in their car. Like,
Yeah.
Raymond wasn't getting up and cleaning his brush, like, and you can't stay in that flow state that you need to be in my opinion. Like, these guys were flow state artists, and you can't be in that flow state if you're constantly messing with your tools. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. There's a ton of factors like that. The paper is a big deal. The ink that you're using is a big deal. How much water is in the ink? Something that I talked to Dave about that he never really seemed interested in talking about was humidity. Like, he lives in, he lives up in Canada. I lived in Michigan for a while. It's way more humid there in the summer. These guys all lived in Connecticut. If it's anything like what I know about the Northeast, it was super humid there, probably in the summer at least. I currently live I'm going to be moving to Alabama in like 2 weeks. So I'm going to have all the beautiful humidity that, I mean, I'll hate it, but for inking, it's going to be great because it's going to be more humid. I live in the Central Valley of California where it's bone dry. And so when I'm inking, I'm fighting against the ink dries in my brush so quick. It's so annoying. I went and did, when I was working on volume 2, I went to with a friend to her cabin, one of her friend's cabins, and I wanted to be working that weekend, and they had swamp coolers instead of central air, and I had a wonderful time working that weekend. I wasn't fighting with my tools because the room was cool but humid. Here, like when I've been doing these, here's some of these sketches I'm working on for the campaign. I got an air conditioning unit right above me blowing humid air right down onto my drawing area, and my ink's drying up super quick, and it's 100 and something degrees outside, bone dry, and that's a huge factor into how your tools work. So there's a lot of these.
It's not like these guys were living in air conditioning or air conditioned studios, or if they did have air conditioning, it was rudimentary. It wasn't like it was climate controlled.
It was swamp cooler units in the window, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's an older form of air conditioning. And then you're in the Northeast, like during the winter, of course it's going to be like, you're in Connecticut in the winter, it's going to be all kinds of moisture. And it's just, so there's a lot of factors like this. The paper that you use, like, I got all kinds of different papers and I tested them. I really liked whatever paper I had when I worked on volume. Well, no, I mean, you never find that perfect combo. And it's like, I'm absolutely sure that the brushes were better. We know for sure because Sean found the old, the 920s, the Gillette 920, I think is the one that Dave was talking about. Neil Adams using. That's like an impossible to use pin, and he was dunking it in water. He was talking to you about that.
Yeah.
On the thing last time. Yeah, the new versions of those pins are like they don't draw. Like he's right. You're like, why are you doing this? Sean found he was able to buy the old version, and those are wonderful. Like they work great. The new ones, I don't know how anyone draws anything with them. Like the ink doesn't come off of them ever. You'll sit there and poke, 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 and then it will start going. But the old ones that Sean sent me, a couple of the nibs, like those work pretty good. They're too flexible for my taste. Like my hand, I don't know. I prefer to work with the brush. I didn't have as much control as I wanted over them. They're good for if you flip them over backwards, which is apparently what Stan Drake did. You know, you're supposed to have the prongs facing down, but to get thin lines, he would flip it over backwards and get a real thin line. I did read that. So, but you can't get that tool that Stan Drake was using. They quite literally, they sell it as the same product, but it's a totally different thing. And I'm absolutely sure that modern day Winsor Newton Series 7 number 2s are not of the same quality that those guys had. There's no way. Like, I mean, they have gotten significantly worse in the 5 years that I've been dealing with this, you know.
Which means that, you know, and if the book were to continue in 15 years, you guys would be going, Crayola needs to make a crayon that'll work.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing that I got from Dave was he sent me a package of some of those brushes, and I was like, oh, he wants me to start drawing again. And then a few days, like a couple of weeks later, I got a call. Hey, did you get that package? Yeah, because he was also sending me the mock-ups for Volume 3. Have you started work on Volume 3? Dave, no, I told you I'm not doing anything else until Volume 1 is on shelves in bookstores. But that was like his little, like, here's some brushes. So, I mean, hopefully that's enough to get me through if we get a publisher on that.
Have you heard anything from anybody on publishing at all?
There's been a couple. There's been a couple people that have. There's a couple smaller people that people have recommended I talk to, which is cool. And there's one like publisher that I really love the stuff they do, that had just asked to read it.
Okay.
Actually, there's been two fairly large publishers who I really like what they do, and I think would be a good fit for the book that asked to read it. One of them came back and said, you know, like, if it's not Dave finishing it, this isn't a marketable book, which is fine. I get it.
Well, I mean, I guess the question at that point would be, okay, what can they offer Dave to get him back working?
Yeah, I mean, but like no one wants to deal with that.
Yeah,
because he's not going to sign a contract, and I don't know. I don't want to say ill, but that's the impression I get, is that a lot of people are just like, nope. Like we've seen the public negotiations, and we don't want to deal with that. And like, yeah, I mean, that's why I'm happy that I have permission to do it now, because I can be like, I'm not that guy.
Right.
We'll do this the normal way. You can contact me through email. But I also just wonder, like, for the people who do get back to me and they're like, hey, could I, like, oh yeah, I'd be interested. Can I see a PDF of what you got? It's like, maybe they just want to read it, you know?
Well, and there's probably a large factor of, show me the 250 pages you got, and then we'll think if we want more. I mean,
yeah.
Hopefully those 250 end on a big enough of a cliffhanger that somebody comes back with, I want to find out what's going to happen.
Yeah, I hope. And like I said, the one larger company already said no. There's one where, I don't know, it's been a couple weeks since a week or two since I sent them the PDF. I would love to, that company would be great. But I mean, that's not even. It's like, you know,
You got
they're just
you
they're
got
just
nibbles. That's
reading it.
all I'm concerned about. It's not doors slammed in your face from every single company you talk to.
Yeah, and me and Sean were talking yesterday about a couple other that I hadn't thought about, and I went and looked at one of them, and it's like, oh yeah, like I like a lot of stuff they do. Like I don't know why they hadn't crossed my mind. So, and there's these smaller companies that are an option. Someone made an introduction. Oh, Menachem at Escape Pod made an introduction to a smaller place yesterday that I haven't heard back from them. I don't know if they're interested or not. But I mean, anything like that where someone knows someone and they,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think like what, you know, like hitting people up on Twitter. That's
Well,
probably,
hey, I tried.
yeah, I know, but you got like Eric Larson, right? And he's like, hey guys, this isn't how you do it.
Well, I didn't intend for it of a, hey, Eric Larson, come read my blog post and then publish his book. It was more of a, this guy's going to pitch to Image just so you as one of the 7 are aware of it. And I understand that's not how you do it, but it was more of a, because Eric Larson, when he was the publisher of Image, was going to do the Cerebus color book of all the young Cerebus stuff. So that's the only reason I was thinking of going to him. And Todd, it was Spawn 10, hey, you work with Dave, Dave, you have a relationship with Dave,
Well, and I mean, look, like I probably, as soon as I like realized Dave was okay with it, I just went and I sent in to the submission editors at all these different publishers, just like hey, Dave quit working on this. I've got the book. Would you be interested? I didn't like, I mean, that's why like you were helping me put together that package to actually send to Image, right? Because I was probably being lazy and sloppy. I mean, and this is why me and Dave could work pretty well together, is I don't think either of us are very patient for doing things the proper way. We just want to do the thing. And so I was probably relying a little bit too much on like, it's Dave Sim, like that will catch people's attention. Like I don't need to go through it's arrogant, a little bit like hubris. I don't need to go through the whole crazy process. No. Like this is obviously a work that people know about. Like, do you want to look at it? But I mean, that works. Some people said no thanks. Some people never got back to me, and a couple people were like, oh yeah, let me take a look. And those are the people I'd like to work with, because those are the people who are willing to just like, it doesn't have to be this like rigid.
Well, and to be fair, Rich Johnson at Bleeding Cool will constantly, when he talks about Dave, brings up that Dave has an open offer to have a seat at Image, to be one of the partners. And I keep thinking, really? Because, if Dave had that, don't you think Dave would have used that phone call?
No, I mean, Dave probably would not have, but I haven't seen Rich say that either.
Well, Rich is, he said it a couple times over the years, and it's every time it comes up, I kind of look at like, I don't believe that. I've been meaning to ask Dave flat out, like, hey, do you have an offer? Because I'm sure back in 1992, yes, those guys very much wanted Dave on board, and he's probably said, no, guys, go do your own thing. I'm publishing Cerebus. It's one
that
of those,
doesn't mean it's still open though.
Yeah. It's not one of those you can come in and play anytime you want, Dave. It was back when we were starving and starting up and we're all afraid of what was going to happen to us when we left Marvel. Dave, come save us.
No, I don't think it was that. I mean, I don't think it was Dave come save us. Those guys made a killing. They were.
Yeah, I mean, well, but
they're all far better off than Dave ever has been. So. I think they just believed in creator rights and they understood his importance. I mean, they wanted everyone, right? They're smart dudes. Like they wanted Jeff Smith there. They wanted Terry Moore there. Like they were just trying to create a powerhouse. Why wouldn't? But that's an open offer. I really doubt that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's an offer that was made, and I'm sure that if you asked all 7 of the original Image partners, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we did do that, didn't we?"
Oops.
Not even oops, just oh yeah, we made that offer to Dave. Yeah, whatever happened to that guy?
I mean, how many of them are even still there? Like, that just doesn't make
4.
sense. But But yeah, I mean, I was, you know, it was probably a mistake I made that I was trying to just be like, instead of going through the proper process everywhere, I was just emailing the submission editor and being like, hey, do you want to look at this book? You know, like, but
Well,
I mean, whatever.
yeah, I mean, how many 250-page graphic novels have you pitched before? I mean,
Yeah, and
it was one of those. I had no problem helping because, like, I told you, I told Eddie, I told Dave, I told everyone, what can I do to help? But you know, it's like, hey, help me write the pitch, and it's like, I'm writing a book report for a book I didn't read. This might not end well for me.
no,
But
I said,
thankfully, Eddie came through with, you know, a basic structure that I could tweak and then send to you, and you could tweak, and then we had something. But
well, it was because the post that you put up was already such a good pitch. I was like, okay, like let's use that. That's good.
well,
Um,
that the intention with that post was, okay, this is going to be as close to the, you know, a boilerplate pitch of this is the basics of what it is, you know, because that way it gives you or Dave or whoever something of, go here, read this, you'll know what's going on. And I'm glad it worked, but at the same time, you know, there's this part of me that's just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I shouldn't be
no,
offering to help people.
no, it was
I should
great.
I should be saying, well, you guys have got this handled. I'm going to go over here and wait for the book to come out.
No, it was great. That's why I asked for your help. I mean, but like I was saying, I was being arrogant or a little bit of hubris in assuming, okay, this is one of those projects that it's like Dave, which is a big name, and it's a project that, I mean, at least me as someone who logs into Bleeding Cool every morning for my comic news, like it's a project that's being talked about as one of the lost projects. So I was just assuming like it wasn't like a some guy out of nowhere that's no one heard of before pitching his like idea for a dystopian sci-fi, right? I was thinking, well, this is a known project by a well-known creator. If you're interested in it, you don't need me to fill out the whole like rigmarole. You either want to check out that long gestating Dave Sim project or you don't. So why am I going to waste, like, you know, I have a lot going on right now. Why am I gonna, like, I just don't have time for this, but I do want to get the book out there. So, you know, I mean, whatever, I'm not playing by the rules, I guess. And the more we don't play by the rules, probably the worse it is, because the more we look like, and this is what I was saying about the Twitter thing, the more we look like it's just going to be another instance of dealing with Dave's not playing by the rules behavior.
Right.
And so that was probably an error on my part with a couple of the companies that I sent something to. I should be playing by the rules from the get-go to show them that I'm not going to try and negotiate publicly with them. I'm not going to make them communicate.
You're not going to dictate terms that no one in the right mind would meet.
Yeah, but you know, like that. But I shouldn't have opened with like, I don't want to fill out your stupid form. Do you want to look at the book or not?
Well, hey, you live and you learn. I mean, you know,
Whatever.
The book will come out in some format. You know, I'm sure there's going to be a publisher that's going to be, hey, no, you know, this is an interesting concept. I can't imagine. So. I can't imagine that every publisher is going to go, you know, because somebody's going to go, you know, if they hear the horror stories of working with, you know, negotiating with Dave and go, wait, that guy, we don't want to negotiate with him. Hey, he's involved, but only a little bit. And as far as the selling the book part, he is adjourned from being in charge of that.
Yeah, I mean, he's technically not involved at all anymore. It's like, you know, it is his book. I don't want to steal it from him and make it my book, but
yeah, it's not like
he's contributed his part and stepped back, and you know, I'm so grateful that he gave me the blessing to move forward with it, and him telling you that I had like my version of it to say, and I had, you know, talking about the Cersei stuff was right. Nice to hear from him, because that was like, I took it as his blessing to write your own ending. Like, it's okay for you to take what we've got and then take those things that you were telling me you saw and write your own ending with it.
Right. I mean,
so that's awesome, because that's what I was planning on doing anyways, and it's good to hear that. Anyways, we've been going for like 3 hours.
yeah.
And I don't want to make this longer than I mean, we're already like, I can't imagine who wants to listen to all of this. And then I've got
edit it down.
Just throw it up there and just let them have at it. Yeah, I've got grading to do, and I'm moving in a couple weeks, and so I got a lot of stuff to do. But hey, I think I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And
I'm not gonna lie, this entire thing was also that I could see if the stupid app actually works the way it's supposed to, so that when Dave calls in August, I can go push button, hey, it works. People will be able to hear Dave.
Well, unfortunately, I talked you into using a different app.
No. Okay, so I got a new cell phone yesterday. I have my old cell phone that doesn't have service, but it's got Wi-Fi, and I'm using the app on my old phone to record everything while we're talking. So I'm going to see if the audio works.
Oh, okay. What I'm going to do is
send me the Zoom stuff, because I can rip the audio from that and then reinsert it into the app. So it'll be good.
You can just post the link and everyone can just go watch the video.
What if I don't want them to see my pretty face?
I don't know. We got like I was showing screenshots and stuff. Like
no. I'll post the whole thing, and people.
But
what's going to happen is I'm going to get 3 people going, this is awesome, thank you. And I'm going to get one guy going, this sucks, you didn't use the app I want. And I'm going to be like, you're the guy that's never happy, and I don't care.
Well, I mean, fine, but make an audio rip for the people who want that. But that is the cool thing about Zoom, is it's going to send me a link like almost as soon as this is done, and it will be immediately viewable.
Okay.
I don't know that wouldn't work with Dave though. Actually you can.
Nothing works with Dave.
No. But they're in Zoom. Like if I do invite. I'm just going to paste this into the chat. Yeah. So when you do a Zoom meeting, I'm just all about this because we're all doing online. This is how we're doing classes. This is how we're doing classes now.
If it doesn't get better by fall, my kid's going to be doing this again.
Yeah. Well, your kid's going to be doing it again. Yeah, it will give telephone numbers, and he can just call that telephone number, and then it will log him into this meeting, and Zoom can record it for you. Okay. And it even has a thing that says international numbers available, but he'll just be able to call. It's producing a series of numbers here for me. So I'll train you on Zoom right now real quick. At the bottom of the screen, I don't know if you have it because you didn't initiate the meeting, but it'll say participants.
Yep.
And you click on that, and then it will say invite. You click on invite and you copy, it says copy invitation. Copy invite link is just a link, but copy invitation gives this whole spiel with phone numbers to call.
All right, there, I got a little invite thingy.
Yeah, and so each time you log into Zoom, you just make a new meeting, and then you get that that invite, and it'll give you the phone number, and you can have Dave call you through this, and then it will record for you.
Oh, if that works and the audio's better than the crappy YouTube videos I've been doing, everybody's going to give me money. I'll be famous, and then I'll open a publishing house and publish a book, and it'll be amazing, and I'll get a pony.
Yeah, that would be pretty great.
Yeah, I'm still gonna have people. We'll do it through Zoom. The audio will be perfect, and somebody will come back with it's too long.
Yeah, well then don't listen.
I mean it's one of those. There's this, I'm trying to make people happy, and I invariably get the 90% of the time is some anonymous person. That's when like we were doing the daily service and health strips. on the blog. And it got to the point where we're getting anonymous comments about how bad they are. And fair enough, some of them aren't that funny. But then again, this is a daily strip where, we're pounding these things out. And I finally just commented, anonymous comments will now be used as future Cerebus and Hell. A moment of Cerebus ads in future issues of Cerebus and Hell. And people have been going, well, fine, use this ad. And I'm like, you guys don't get it. Because, like, one of them was just like, I'm trying to remember how they phrased it. It was scathing. It was nasty. And I immediately went, that's going to be a perfect ad. Because I know Dave. If we send it to him and say, Dave, we're going to run this in the back of the book, he's going to think it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I mean, like, I don't know. I've been an artist my whole life, right? I when I was 7, I told my parents I was going to be a comic artist when I grew up. And, I've been doing art every day since. And, like, I mean, you just have to, like, you got to do what you want to do. And if you're lucky, 100 people like it, 1,000 people like it, and everyone else thinks you're like the worst thing ever, or you're just a fool, or you're an idiot. And I don't know. I grew a thick skin to that a long time. I had Neil Adams. Here's a photorealist related story. I had Neil Adams. I tried to show Neil Adams some of my work at San Diego Comic-Con when I was 15 or 16. And he told me he didn't want to look at it because he knew it was going to be bad enough that it wasn't worth his time, just, I guess, based on my age or something. And I kept, like, trying to persist, like, well, like, I know you're well respected. I would like your opinion. And he basically said, like, okay, I'll look at it, but if I don't like it, I'm going to tear your art in half right in front of you. And at that point, I was like, well, I kind of would like to have that art to go show other people, so I'm just not going to bother this guy any further. He's not going to be helpful because I'm just irritating him. But it was that, like, thick skin that you grow, like you're 14, 15, talking to someone who you think is really good and they're threatening to tear your stuff in half. And it's just like, yeah, well, okay, whatever. Like,
so what you're telling me is that you're going to send him a copy You Don't Know Jack and a letter saying, please film a video of you ripping this in half?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I'm sure he would have plenty of negative things to say about the work in it. Still, there's plenty to critique in it. But yeah, maybe we should send Neil Adams a copy. I don't know. But yeah, you can't worry about what people on the internet or what people in general think about stuff. Like, if you're worried about that and you're producing any kind of art product, you're in the wrong business.
I mean, that's, every day I do a post, and every day I hit post and I think to myself, well, is this one going to go over well, or is this one going to go over poorly? And the answer is, you got to post something tomorrow, Matt.
Yeah, who cares? Don't think about it. Anyways, I gotta go. I really gotta go get to these.
Yeah, I should gotta go check, make sure I still have 2 kids that are alive. I saw one of them. But we'll find out.
All right. Thanks so much, Matt. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Maybe once I get more settled in Alabama and stuff, we can do this again towards the end of the campaign or something.
Yeah, if the campaign's still going and you're settled and ready, yeah. I will.
Actually, no, I'm going to be moving in when the campaign ends. So I don't know. We'll talk at some point again.
Not a problem.
All right. Take it easy.
Yep. Take it easy. Bye.
Bye.